pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Thanks for coming, as usual. We're going to get started. Our first item on the agenda is an informational hearing on the need for a traffic light at the intersection of Route 10, which is College Highway, and Pomeroy Meadow Road, so directly across from Opa and the road leading down to the school. It's been brought to our attention by many individuals and business owners that intersection is a safety concern. So we're going to hear concerns in support of or not in support of, letting the Department of Transportation know that we are in support of or not in support of, putting a traffic light there. If there's anybody that wishes to speak to that matter, we welcome you to come to the podium. I was going to say we need about 30 minutes, but I don't see too many people that might want to speak to that. So at the end of 30 minutes, I might have to put a stop to it, and then any other questions or concerns can be directed towards Heather, the town administrator. I'll open by saying that although the kids crossing the street on half days from school to go to Subway is not the main reason why we need a stoplight, it is a reason that we need a stoplight. Also, with Safe Routes to School beginning their process, I think that the foot traffic in the center of town there is going to be much heavier than it is now, and so it would be helpful to at least have a light where you could push the button and then it would go on, not necessarily one that's, you know, red and yellow and green all of the time, but one that could be used as needed. If there's anybody that would like to speak in support of or not in support of, we'd love to hear from you. Or comments from feel free to come to the microphone. You'll notice a new microphone at the podium. You do not need to bend over. It will hear you from where you are.
Okay. Mark Reed, 166 Brickyard Road. You were saying it's just a pedestrian crossing light?
I'm saying that if we are going to recommend one, that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
I don't think that we need one that, you know, turns every 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I believe that it's a good thing to study. You know, there is standards that Mass Highways has to determine what the traffic flow is and the rates, and I think it would be good to look into it. It is a timing issue if it is going to be a full traffic light. I know that when they installed the traffic light in Easthampton at the end of West Street and Northampton Street, it's been a great improvement, but they've had struggling with timing because there's a lot of backups because the timing of the lighting is not right. So, but I would support, you know, looking into it. And
the timing seemed right because of the Safe Routes to School project, so it seems like maybe now would be a good time to have that conversation.
Do you know when that's going to?
I think it starts next spring or next fall.
Okay, 2017?
Yes.
Okay.
Safe Routes to School. Safe Routes to School, we were hoping to get underway for this construction season, Mark.
Okay.
It just comes down to how long it takes us to do appraisals and compensate the properties. I'll talk about a little bit in my report, but essentially the earliest would be fall this year.
Okay.
And if this piece goes forward and the board writes a letter, who knows when Mass DOT would, and if they do take action, when it would be.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Before, when you were talking about timing, you were talking about timing of the light intervals, not timing of when to put it in?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
So we'd have to study that, too.
Correct. Right.
Yep.
You know, it works well, but sometimes when they install a new traffic light, they have to work at changing the length that it's red or green to make sure that there's no, you know, backup of cars.
Do you know if they, I think they can set up lights by some kind of, I don't want to say timing device, but when a car approaches it from the
Yes.
lesser used road,
Yes, they can.
that'll trigger it?
Yes, they can.
How is that done? In the road, or is it done by?
It's in the roadway, so when you drive over it, you'll activate the light, and that's the technology that's out there.
So I would assume they'd look at everything when they're looking at a light.
I would say so, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Jackie?
I had spoke to former Chief Silvernail about putting a light there quite a few years ago, and was told we didn't have the funds to do it. But I'd recommend that we do, because there has been accidents there, and Chief Silvernail did give me a report from DOT about there was more accidents there than any other intersection in town. Also, I don't think it should be just when the kids cross, I think it should be timed so that when there's the most accidents in the morning, travel time, that the light should work. Because it gets really scary to get from, when you're on Pomeroy trying to take a left, it's impossible to get out. And it's dangerous, and there has been accidents.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree, and I think, Jackie, that they could probably time it so that the busy times it's automatically, and other times it's just maybe flashing. But I often go from Route 10, Pomeroy Meadow, to the post office, and when you try to get out there, it's like taking your own life in your hands some days. You got a lot of students going from Route 10 onto Pomeroy Meadow, and a lot of cell phone usage, when they're going around the corner. So I'm all in favor of doing a study to see what's best.
Charlie?
Well, I'm the one that sort of pushed the board to put this on the agenda. Basically, when I was going around with Heather with the Safe Route to Schools, we were getting a lot of comments from businesses saying that they see a need there. The next thing would be a traffic study. That traffic study would be done by the state. That study will indicate what the need is. There shouldn't be any cost to the town because it's a state highway. So basically, the Board of Selectmen would be voting to request the Department of Transportation to conduct a traffic study of the intersection to determine needs of that facility.
Are you making a motion? Or are you just making a comment?
I was gonna let other people comment.
Would anybody else in the audience like to comment on the need or lack thereof for a traffic light?
Are you talking about Pomeroy Meadow?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Sorry.
You're in time, Mr. Sheehan.
Good timing. My name is John Sheehan, Pomeroy Meadow Road, and I have been driving that road for the last 38 years. And the traffic, as those of you who have lived here for many years know, has increased exponentially. It is really, really dangerous, I think. I think last year's town report said that we had between 50 and 60 accidents, the most accidents of anywhere in town. And it's just becoming increasingly dangerous. Coming up Pomeroy Meadow Road facing Opa. You have the traffic coming north, you have traffic coming from Easthampton, you have people coming and going from Opa, and people from the trading post, and it just all meets there. What really worries me are walkers and bikers. In a car, I think it's dangerous. But for walkers and bikers, it's really dangerous. And for those of you who are around town during the week, you notice there's more and more bikers. This is one of the most popular bike routes in the valley. And you see the people, these are bikers that take it seriously. They wear fluorescent clothing and everything for safety. But you'll see 2, 3, sometimes more in a row. And, as a car driver, I feel it's very unsafe. But for bikers who are coming and looking out for potholes and everything, I think it's more dangerous. The town plans on building sidewalks there, right? I think once the sidewalks are in, the number of foot traffic is going to increase greatly. I was in Pomeroy Meadow Road for many years before we put the sidewalk. I can't tell you how many, I didn't think it was going to be used. It's used 7 days, 7 nights a week, the sidewalks. So this will be used, I feel, even more. So if the town is able to do anything to urge, I know Department of Transportation has final say, right? And it probably is a long waiting line in the pipeline for projects. But if you can do anything to urge them to take care of this, I would strongly urge you to do so.
Thank you.
And thank you for having this. I just saw this today and I said, oh, this is great.
Thank
John.
you. Hello.
Hi, Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. I would love to see something done there. My only concern is the traffic that comes out of Opa the incorrect way. And if it was at all possible to have something like we have here for a crosswalk, right by Subway. Because if they still have to cross at Opa, they still have to walk in front of the bar to get over to Subway. That would be my only concern there.
Sidewalk will be on
The other side,
There is,
where she wants.
not on the side of Opa.
there is
Right,
going
the
to
other
be,
side.
in the Safe Route to School plan, there is a crosswalk that's being designed over by, I believe it's Helen Drive. It's the next street over from
Further
Subway.
down.
Yeah,
It's not, from a child's eye, it's not convenient.
right.
Yeah. They won't go down to Helen and come
They're
back to
still
Subway.
gonna have to walk in front of other businesses where people are pulling in and out of to
But
get
that's
to
the
the
reason having a
crosswalk.
traffic study.
All right, I just want to make sure that that is included then
Fair
in
enough.
that.
We
Thank you.
actually have one of the owners from Opa here in the audience.
Yeah. And that was, I've seen numerous rear ends there. Somebody goes to pull out and then realizes they can't, but the guy behind them nails the guy. And then I've had many people come out of Opa incorrect way and come right at you as you're trying to turn. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Feel free to come to the podium.
Hi, my name is Efthymios Rizos. I'm part owner from Opa. I think the stoplight over there will be very helpful for a few different reasons. One first reason, like just I heard a little bit about the kids coming when they have half day and walking to go to the subway. Be helpful. There is stoplight to be able to cross and go to the subway. Especially if it's kids like, usually it's 5th and 6th grade, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Another reason, across the street we have some tenants or some people they rent from us in the commercial space. They come for lunch or we go sometimes. So there is few crossings back and forth, and that also going to help with the stoplight. Another reason, it's Opa, reason when we built it, Mike Gaed, then wasn't the chief, came to us, says you can redirect the traffic instead of coming out and be, how you say, be harder, be like one car from Pomermet, one car from Opa, and coming traffic be hard. Put no exit and have the cars come from the other way, so maybe a little bit less accidents. I think within the first week we had accidents from the other side because it was so busy Opa, was busy the road, busy from the other. We had accidents, especially sometimes with the snow banks. Thank God this year we didn't have too much snow. It's so hard even to see from the other side. So I think the light is going to be very helpful for Opa and the customers and the traffic and everybody.
Very good. Sure.
How many accidents have you seen?
From my personal knowledge, around 5.
5,
But can be more.
yeah.
That I heard or I have seen some. Thank God we didn't have any big.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Any questions, gentlemen? Any questions?
No?
and another, the last thing. Sometimes my employees, because or customers, even customers, when it's busy, they're parking across the street. So in the beginning, special, a lot of people that were parking across the street the weekend. So it was a lot crossings, crossover. So I think for us, at least for our people, it's going to be a good thing to have a stoplight there.
And what time of the day do you think it's the busiest?
All over, even lunchtime, how you say, it's busy because, yes, supper time is less traffic, Probably the busiest is like when people finish work, like 4 or 5 o'clock, you see all people all over. Maybe when the school gets off, like around 3:30. Lunchtime, because a lot of traffic. But the danger is in the evening, and a couple of the accidents can happen in the evening, because, how you say, you don't see in the night.
Right.
So the evening's the worst.
Because they don't, it's hard to see, especially if
Right.
it's snow, at least the daylight, you can see a little better.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments, questions from the audience or the board?
Make a motion?
Sure.
I move that the Board of Selectmen send a letter to DOT to conduct a traffic study and determine need and design for a traffic signaling system for that intersection.
Second.
So there's a motion on the floor by Charlie Konecki for the Board of Selectmen to send a letter to the Department of Transportation to conduct a traffic study indicating whether there's a need, or what was the other thing you said?
If there's a design need, to determine need and design
Need
for,
and design.
for a traffic signaling system.
Okay.
And the reason I say traffic signaling system is because we don't know if we're talking just crosswalk signals or if we're talking a full
Yeah.
traffic signal,
Or both.
or both.
Well, if we're gonna do it once, we gotta do it right.
And if it's open for discussion, I just want to let you know that we did bring up the issues with the safe route to schools about a crosswalk there. But because of the fact that they're looking at more population, this is my understanding of it, on the Helen Drive area, because it ties into all the subdivisions back there, that's the reason they put their crosswalk down the street away from Opa Opa. But the reality of it is, we actually need two there.
Yeah.
One that's signaling and one that,
Yeah, but people aren't going to walk down Helen Drive to come to Opa Opa. They're just going to go right across.
Or can come to Helen Drive to go to cross over to Cumberland Farms.
Right.
You're just gonna run across the street.
Right.
Well, it can only solve a few problems at a time.
Well, that's why hopefully the study will look at the whole area.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any other discussion?
the whole purpose is get the study going.
Right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Town administrator's not here. She's out.
Would you like me to draft the letter to give the town administrator?
Go for it.
I mean,
I'm just looking to see.
That's the
is there-
background.
I do.
The Cook and County Road, but I don't see Mr. Walmsley here. Not yet. Okay. Heather, all right. You guys are killing me here. Vicky's not here yet. Finance Committee, do you want to give us an update, Mr. Rosenberg? Oh, Heather, you're out. I skipped to Mike. Are you here to talk to us? You're up. No, Mike's up. You weren't in the room. I skipped ahead.
Good evening.
Hi.
Michael Rosenberg, 144 East Street, Chairman of the Finance Committee. So we are doing our quarterly report out today. I have a couple items. First off, annual report. We're finalizing that to put that forward to Heather to go into the annual report from us. Some changes. We included some of the things we've been working on in the report. Other item we have going is the long-term financial plan. We had sent that out for interdepartmental comment and input. We're going to revisit that probably the next meeting or so and send an email out to the departments.
Did you get any response?
No. So yeah, we'll send something out, try to revitalize that, rekindle it. We'll be about 1.5 years into the 3 years, so we may have to look at some things, some of the numbers in there. Another item we're working on, the reserve fund requests. One thing we found is that we're getting requests for money or for funds for something, but there's never backup. It's, hey, can we have $1,000 for X? Okay, well, where's the backup? Where's the information? Well, we haven't done that yet. So we're pushing back a little bit on, if you're going to ask for funds, at least provide the invoice for why you need the funds or an estimate for what will put your budget line over. We're going to work on trying to just try to encapsulate that with maybe a couple bullets at the bottom of the form, just as a please provide backup. You know, the other thing, when the backup is in there, it makes it easier for us to make a decision, make a determination, especially if people aren't there at the meeting. You know, if there's no backup and there's no one there, we're going to table it, to be honest, because, you know, we don't have the information we need. So,
How many requests do you get?
I don't know, one every other meeting, every third meeting, something like that. Some are more than others. We had one recently for some tree removal, which, you know, we spoke to the tree warden through email, and he has some more scope to define with that, so we tabled it until he has the, you know, the true cost of the estimate, you know, from the company that we're going to do that'll choose to do the work with. You know, we have a miscellaneous one for some building supplies, I think, in our mailbox now. You know, we get them. I mean, it's nearing the end of the year, so we're kind of expecting to get more going forward.
Okay.
And
How much is left in the reserve? Roughly.
I don't want to.
We can look it up.
Yeah, I'd have to. I don't want to speak without knowing it. I don't have it right here. No. But it's probably spent. Call it 3,000 maybe out of there. I think.
Not too much.
Yeah, something like that.
At the end of the year flurry, you're right. You're going to
Exactly. Especially with some of the situations with salary lines going over in certain departments, and you know, I know the police department will more than likely be one of them, and some other ones too. So, but we're kind of ready for that. That's one of the reasons we've been pushing back on not having documentation, because you know, there may be someone who comes with all the documentation with the full need right then and there. So. One other thing we did mention, and we've kind of mentioned through the budgeting season, if you're coming to the reserve fund well, you know, year after year, maybe you should try to budget in some of those items. You know, we are going with the needs-based budget this year, so if it's a repetitive need you see, then you should put it in your budget request for 17, outline it, and then, you know, we can obviously consider it, especially if it's something that happens yearly. So,
A question on that. You mentioned the police department, so that's just an example. Historically, the police department would come and ask for money out of the reserve because they don't have enough in a line item.
Mm-hmm.
But again, historically, at the end of the year, when Vicki reconciles accounts, the department always has money in other line items that they use and they give back. So do you look at the other line items to see if there's internal transfers you can make before you give out a reserve?
we have, we're working on some, actually probably Vicki and the police chief more than us, but they're working on the 911, the infamous 911 grant,
Yeah.
to be utilized for certain reimbursements of training pay that has happened over the year, and utilizing it for things going forward this year to help even out that. We do look at, you know, the other balances. Sometimes it's tough to make the determination. You know, we really need to dive into what it was that balance meant for in that line item, and is it something that's going to occur at end of the year cost, or is it something that, you know, we talk to Heather and Vicki and say this should be a line item transfer at the end of the year to cover that cost.
And actually, I hope the department head would come to you and say, I want to transfer from this to cover it, but
And that's something I know we have talked about is, you know, there are line item transfers at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of, I want to say out of the loop, but we don't necessarily know from what fund they're taking the money and into what fund it's going. But like you said, if it's interdepartmental and there's extra funds in one line, that should be sort of earmarked or known to be utilized for that, whatever negative balance you may have going in any of those accounts. So, yeah, it's something we've talked about, and I mean, it's kind of a reminder for me to write it down and when we go forward, so.
and it may help save some reserve fund money for other needs.
Right. Yep. Any other reserve fund items? No. Last I had on here was the budget. Obviously, we're working through that process. I think all have been submitted and input. And then we'll do our final group review of the fire department this Thursday at 5:30. We've posted the meeting kind of in advance of our group meeting that we'll have, not joint meeting, group meeting, right? Just a member from the board. So we'll hopefully be able to go through that. Obviously, we need to look at it a little bit in advance to see how things line up. All in all, I think the budget review is going well. We've got a lot of them in, working with the departments. I know the police chief's been working really hard on his, getting into the dollars and cents of that with Vicky. Same thing with Randall. He's been working with Vicky and the other departments too. Everyone's looking. We are asking questions about certain lines. We do have comments for the group review of, this number's in there, but why? Why is that number there? Kind of, is it earmarked for something, or has it just been we always have that amount, that's what we budget, because it is needs-based, so there's pluses and minuses to this, because if a department feels they need something, then they're going to put it in that we need this, and, it also begs the question from us, well, please justify the need. Can you explain to me why you need this amount of dollars for this thing which you purchased a year ago? Why do you need to buy it again? That type of stuff. Questioning blanket items, if there's some sort of consulting fee or some consulting dollar line in there. What is that based on? Is it based on historical averages, or is it just the number you've put in there over the years? So, yeah, we've been diving into some of the budgets, asking the departments to put in what they feel they need, right? I mean, because we know what a level fund is from, last year to this year, and you look at the delta between the need and the level, and you ask the questions why, and maybe it's something we can work with. Like always, the school department's, feeling the pinch. We met with them last week, I think, both Norris and Hampshire. So it was a good meeting. It was productive. There was a lot of conversation, but once again, we talked about our priorities for budgeting, and they weren't in an order, but right there was a public safety, fully fund highway, and school. Not in any specific order, but those were the three. I think we've really looked at those, and as a group, when we discuss it Thursday at the meeting, it's good to look at the school department request and see where we can, make up some of those needs they have. Like we know we're sort of hampered by Hampshire Regional because we get what we get, and that's what we have to pay a lot of the times, and it is difficult to see the progress and the improvements that school's making versus the lack of progress and improvements we can make in the own local school. So, budgetarily, it'd be nice to put some attention towards that area.
Can I just ask a clarification question? The meeting on Thursday starts at 5:30, but fire is on at 6?
So fire is at 5:30.
5:30.
And then the sort of group meeting session was going to start at 6. So
Okay.
our goal is to kind of flush out the fire department questions ahead of time, and then when we get to the group meeting, kind of pull back and just look at the budget as a whole with the fire department numbers in there. So
So what do you mean by group meeting? What's happening at 5:30 versus 6? I just want to make sure I'm there at the right time.
5:30, we're going to review the fire department FY17 budget
With the chief?
with the chief till 6. 6 o'clock, townwide budget,
So-
reviewing all the departments. So
So 5:30 is the time, okay.
yeah, if you'd like to sit in at 5:30, obviously you're more than welcome to.
Yep.
We usually have a rep there, and I'm sure Heather will be there.
I'll be there, yep.
Jackie?
Okay, the last meeting I attended, we were discussing the water department,
Yes.
and Donna had talked about reviewing the debt inclusion loans for that department. Did she get back to you at all on getting in touch with the banks and doing so?
I did not hear back from her.
Oh, okay.
Heather?
I have an update on that. We'll be meeting with Donna in 2 weeks, along with someone from the water department, I believe Matt Christie, and our financial advisor, Clark Rowell, on that matter. But I can't make any promises. I don't know if there's anything we can really do. I think a lot of them might be where they are.
But we have to try.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Anything else, Mike?
I'm probably good for now. Any
questions
questions,
for
comments,
Mike?
concerns? No.
Thanks for the update.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to go backwards to Heather before she leaves the room again with the town administrator report.
I was gonna go hunt Donna down, but then I realized I could send poor Virginia.
So that worked. So I have a bunch of things for you folks. Tonight, Safe Routes to School, give you an update where we are in that since last time. We did end up with 2 out of the 12 abutters that actually requested that we had the property appraised. One was a resident, one was Cumberland Farms. Cumberland Farms didn't so much as request, but simply they refused to cooperate in any other manner, so we're on that piece. What does this mean? This means that we had to solicit quotes for appraisals. That was a very fun experience that we hope not to have to repeat anytime soon.
That's just for a temporary easement?
That's for a temporary construction easement. You have to have an appraisal and a review appraisal. We've got the quotes back on that. We're going to be looking at about $10,000. We have applied to Chapter 90 funds. It will take a couple weeks to process the paperwork. Upon completion of the paperwork being processed, we will then proceed with retaining these individuals or this company to do so. I can't tell you the name of the firm. I think it was the O'Connor one. Does that sound?
DJ O'Connell?
O'Connell?
Is he nearby?
Holy Oak, big construction.
Yes, I believe so.
So can I just ask a question?
But don't hold me to that. Yes, ma'am.
So if you don't get the funding through Chapter 90,
We are to be able to get the funding
We
through
will.
Chapter 90. We've already confirmed with them. It's just a matter of dotting the right I and crossing the right T. for
okay,
them.
don't miss any.
And just to clarify for me, why would we pay $10,000 for a temporary easement? Just,
Temporary construction easement, John.
I know, but are they being,
So this is just the appraisal work
This
that's
isn't-
costing
this
this
isn't the
cost.
money for the
The
property.
actual money
Oh,
that is just
I know it.
compensation is expected to be a mere fraction of the amount.
Yeah.
However, an abutter has the right to request an appraisal
oh,
of
I
their
understand,
property.
but I mean, this
So
is
they
just a
requested-
temporary construction easement.
Yes, and we will know moving forward in the future, once we get these values. So when people ask moving into the future, we will have a baseline to be able to say, just to let you know, last time.
But what is it based on? Loss of business that goes in and out of that area?
So one's a resident and one's a
Well,
business.
I'm talking about the 7-Eleven.
I think it comes
Cumberland
down-
Farms, whatever.
7-Eleven. I think it comes down to where the property is.
I
the
get my
amount of
Slurpee and I
property.
go home, you know?
I don't really know, John, but what I do understand is as a temporary construction easement's a very short period of time
Yeah.
that the land will be utilized for. And we're not taking the land, we're simply walking on the
Well,
land.
I'm
putting a
familiar with them, that's
sidewalk
why
and a
I'm
walk.
going, why so much
So
just
if
for
you
the
didn't
temp?
have those 2 pieces of property,
We would already be in
We would already be
construction
in
bidding
construction.
season, and we would have a sidewalk up and running by the fall. More likely than not, assuming nothing held up Mass DOT. But at this point, we're waiting on this. There's a lot of pressure from Mass DOT to get the appraisals done before March 31st. As you can see, that's not done, despite our best efforts. So we are working on that. The Mass DOT paperwork for the Chapter 90 for this project should be in their hands, more specifically Darrell's tomorrow.
okay?
Any questions on that?
Where's the private owner? That's one of the
The
abutters on.
private owner is on, what's the circle?
Mountain View.
Mountain View Circle.
Okay.
So, any questions on that piece? Cool. Procurement, so we have the bid for the handrail out. That officially can be requested from folks on April 11th. Responses are due back on May 2nd. One of the biggest concerns we've had is just the fact that people are going to actually have to fabricate these pieces, these railings, and galvanized steel. Does that sound about
Gip
right?
galvanized steel, double bar, 1.25 piping, if I remember right, epoxied into the concrete.
So we have it everywhere it needs to be,
Think so.
to be posted. The only last place is the town clerk's office, and that was the easiest one, so we haven't overwhelmed her with the papers yet, but she will have that. Other projects, just to give folks a note, this was in your packets this week, a list of all the projects that are currently rolling on procurement. I just wanted to run through them real quick so you know what's out there. We are working with the concrete repair on Town Hall to Chapter 149. Building construction project, we should be actually able to smooth sail that one because it's under any specified amount and the individual works for himself, so prevailing wages is out. We're working on procuring costs for and a new contract for photocopiers town-wide. We still have the roof insulation for Town Hall on the list. Safe Routes to School appraisal is underway. HVAC Maintenance for Town Hall, we currently have SNE. We did ask for other bids and quotes. B&G, I think, is the other company. Does that sound right, Charlie? B&G, BG?
I know nothing.
So they're a HVAC mechanical company. They gave us a quote. We need to check that out. As long as they're under the state contract, we're good to roll, smooth sailing on that one. Roof replacement for Conant Park is on the project list. I'm so excited about that one, Mark. Railing for Town Hall, that's the one we just talked about. We also have the HVAC for the library, and we're waiting to get specifications back so we can put that out to bid. Any questions on procurement as of this moment?
Nope.
Fantastic. Budget. So I printed out, folks, where we are in the draft revenue piece. This was the most updated version we have. And I'm not saying there's no errors on this one. We've only looked at it with about 4 sets of eyes. We usually get like about 6 or 8 to make sure we don't have any errors. The numbers are a little bit lower. We took Vicky's suggestions, and Vicky helped work on this to get it to the piece where you see exactly what's going in there. So if you look more specifically down below where it says other available funds, you will see things like water enterprise funds and transfer enterprise funds at the bottom. That's the indirect cost, and that's all that we're showing and representing at this spot. Last year we did a little bit different with DLS's guidance. Last year we actually showed all of the revenue coming in and only the expenses of the enterprise fund going out, and therefore the indirect cost wasn't directly seen. It was the money left over in between, but now you're seeing it very specifically. Some changes on this also to note here. One of them being that if you look below, let's see, school busing fees, as of right now, the school department, Virginia can correct me if I'm wrong, but the school committee has not made any affirmative decision on wishing to institute a fee next year. So we're assuming at this moment that there will be no busing fee going forward on the revenue side. One thing to keep in mind on this, where this becomes rather problematic, is in this way. We had a meeting with the school department last week. School department mentioned that they weren't sure that they wanted to continue cutting that one bus that they had cut that caused a lot of discussion and controversy a few weeks ago. Should they not cut it, the savings of the bus will not be there. So if today the bus costs $10 because we had cut one of the buses, tomorrow when we add the bus back, it will be $35. The next problem you're running into is if we do not charge a busing fee next year, the busing contract in and of itself goes up by another $10,000 in the contract. So we will be seeing a $35,000 difference because you will not have $25,000 coming in, but instead you will have $35,000 going out. So that will be a difference that you do not see this year, which will affect the town-wide, including, but not limited to, the school department. Mike's comment earlier on Hampshire Regional, essentially they say X and we give them X because we're kind of stuck. With that piece, as far as if town meeting doesn't want to, it doesn't matter, we're outvoted. We do have good representation on the Hampshire Regional School Committee. I had to think of what you were called, Tammy. School Committee. And I do believe they've been fighting very hard. But one of the problems we continue to face, and I bring up every year, is that we exceed net school spending by over $1 million for Hampshire Regional. But we end up nickeling and diming and pennying to get to net school spending for Norris. So keep that in mind in the head. We are working with the school budget, and we are going to be working with Norris school numbers all over the place, because as we've talked about in the past, we need to meet net school spending. As we've discussed, net school spending is comprised of several pieces, including Norris School's budget, Smith vocational and any other vocational tuition, charter school tuition, school choice tuition, and indirect costs. This year, which you do not see on here because it's on the expense side, so far we've penciled in a lower indirect cost than we have even incurred this year in hopes to try to offset some of this. There'll be a lot of discussion, and I'm sure we'll get into some of the discussion Thursday night as to how much we can reduce Smith and a guesstimated estimate. As we know, we generally come in much lower than they're anticipated in order to put the funds initially into Norris's budget. Let's see. Any other questions on that piece or this revenue sheet that I've kind of gone off track of? No? Okay. Some other things to keep in mind. Fire department study, we are waiting on it to be able to come to a complete realization of funding for that budget. The study is actually, I have a very, very rough draft presentation in my office. Travis is working on it, and he hopes to have it to me by the end of the week. He would like to present it to the board at their next meeting. So you will have his report and his formal presentation of it. I do not believe anyone has the draft right now other than my computer.
Can you tell us what the draft says?
I can give you an idea of what the draft says. There's a lot of action steps that are going to be placed, according to his draft, in the hands of the fire chief, including, but not limiting to, coming up with an organizational chart, providing a lot more data to both the board and the town to understand the happenings of the department, the statistics, and so forth. Also looking at the actual need of apparatuses, where, you know, we do things non-traditionally and we try to rotate things around so that they're all used, but ultimately at the end of the day, we have more stuff than we need. That's the theme I've got so far from the 9 pages of draft.
Okay.
So, again, Mike mentioned that we are having the meeting from finance team and finance committee on Thursday night. We'll be going over some rules to try to get the budget down, also looking at every budget in and of itself. We might have to take a second night, I don't know, but the hope is to start looking at things and making sure, as we always say, similarly situated the same. So we may have to come up with some rules to apply across the board to get everyone on the same page, but of most important, I think everyone would agree, is the first thing we generally do is any mandatory spending. So if we have a obligation to fund something at a certain number, whether it be net school spending, accreditation levels for library, we generally stick those numbers in first and then move from there. Not to say that's the number you stay at, but you have to start somewhere when you're looking at what we have. Any other questions on that? Okay. Annual town report. We still have quite a few annual town reports that are outstanding. If anyone's in this room and has a board, committee, or commission that has an outstanding report, please feel free to get it to me. I am also delinquent, so I am not to be held outside of that list. But we are working on it. Board of Selectmen also has a report. I think Charlie had mentioned in the past that he'd be willing to look at it and draft it for the board instead of Heather drafting a town admin report and a Board of Selectmen report. It might be great to have the Board of Selectmen report come from the BOS.
Was that a senior moment I had?
I think it's an excellent idea.
Well, Charlie, when no one else stands up, we just automatically turn the pointer.
I'm here, though.
Charlie, I'll help.
Need a motion, we'll be glad to do that for you.
I've had enough emotion.
I think Jackie said she'd be happy to assist you in drafting said.
Good, because, you know, my articulation is limited.
So I will email last year's report to both of you, and please feel free to look at past ones. That's just the one I have electronically. Other things, complete streets program. So Randall and I spent about 3 hours of our lives or more today in Hadley, at the Hadley Farm Meeting House. I think it is very nice facility. Mass DOT ran a program. It's the Complete Streets Program Training 101. There's also a 201. You don't have to do both. It's a free program training where you go and they went over the entire piece of Complete Streets. What is Complete Streets? It's a Mass DOT funded program in which you are eligible, similar to Chapter 90, to get reimbursed for projects in whether the design phase or the actual construction phase of projects. What does Complete Streets mean? Well, they explained it to be something along the lines of providing accessibility and usability of streets to all. Cars, pedestrians, motorists, horseback riders. Maybe that one might be a stretch, Charlie, because that actually wasn't included on any of the stuff. Walkers, whatever you may have. And they talk about, they give the silly examples we've all heard of. You have a sidewalk that starts here, stops, and then you never see it again, but it goes nowhere. So it's the idea of figuring out how to go from point A to point B and continuing it. Looking uniquely at each community to see what their needs are. Some people, bike paths make sense. Sometimes it makes sense to make a wider road and make them their own bike section. So that was that program. There's 3 tiers to it, 3 steps. The first step is to have someone from the community municipality trained. So we have 2 of us trained. We're good to roll on that piece. The second part is we actually have to come up with a process or procedure that we'd like to have implemented, and then it gets scored by Mass DOT. Has to get an 80 or we don't pass. And there's sample template ones out there that if this is the direction we want to go, we can pick it up and have it done in a week. It's just importing our information over theirs and modifying it to our community. If that gets passed, then the next thing is you eventually work on your design plan. You know, what's your future that you'd like to see? What streets do you want connected? What sidewalks do you want implemented? You work with either Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, outside consultants, or what have you, and you work with the state on the reimbursement funds that I believe is up to $50,000 for a community. And then the construction aspect, should we get there, is the 3rd tier, and that's up to $400,000. I do not know if any communities at this point have currently gone beyond tier 2. In the project, it looked like some people had enrolled and accomplished tier 1 back in 2013. So, but that's the information for the board. That's the direction the board wishes to pursue. We're happy to continue going that direction until it starts costing money.
Is there any downside to it? I mean, it sounds all
Downside is it's a lot of work. Downside is it's more work similar to Chapter 90. No one has actually completed the entire program at this point, so you know we like to be a first around here. Yeah, like to compete with those first there, John. It really comes down to the amount of work. The first tier is not a problem. I mean,
about a week, you said, for the first?
well, once we get a copy of a policy, we modify it to our liking. The Board of Selectmen approves it. You sit down with Planning Board, have them approve it, make sure everyone's stamp is on it. You have to have a public meeting, which is simply where we are now in front of the Board of Selectmen to say, yeah, this looks pretty, smile.
Yeah, I don't think we can throw that opportunity away.
But I think once we get through, you know, maybe this would be a project for after town meetings, so we can get out things that have to be done first.
Is there a time frame for?
There's no time frame. Everything rolls from what we could see. You're giving me a dubious look there, Charlie.
You were there also, right?
I was not.
No, the entire
Randall was
town of
there.
Hatfield was there, but Charlie was not.
I was not there. No, I was not. I can see that.
Vicki?
So my question would be, currently we have $951,000 in Chapter 90, plus another $352,000 we're getting in 2017. Wouldn't our time be better spent trying to use that money first to do what we need to do with it than try a whole nother project when we have all this money that we really should be using for Chapter 90?
That's our money right now.
It's our money.
So,
But if you don't continue to use it, the state might say, yeah, you know what, we're not going to give you any more money.
but can Randall work on using the current funding, and Heather and whoever else can work on getting additional funding?
Well, if it's a lot of work and you need Randall's input, then I guess I would think that you'd rather have him try to use the Chapter 90 money first. But
No,
that's,
it's selfish, but I'd rather do both, especially the way our budgets are. And if Heather and Randall think it's a possibility.
Any more questions, comments on that?
let's
Okay.
go to the rest thing. I mean, we've got to give her some guidelines, some direction to this.
I guess I see Vicky's point. I see Heather's point. Somewhere there's got to be a place in the middle. I agree with you. I mean, we don't have a lot of money anyway, but if we have, what, $1.2 million potentially sitting there, then we probably should figure out how to use that before they stop giving it to us.
Yeah, I guess the question on that is
Why haven't we
done
used
that
it,
in
and
the
what
past?
projects can it be used for, and
There's a lot of projects out there.
May I suggest that we invite the highway superintendent to the next meeting and get an update on what projects he has on the table for?
I mean, are those, is that money tied up waiting for DOT to say, yes, we can use it, or is it readily accessible?
You can use, my understanding, Vicki, please correct me if I'm incorrect on this one. My understanding is with Chapter 90 funds, all projects need to be pre-approved. So one thing Randall's been working on this week is we do a lot of our procurement of highway materials, including pavements things, through Hampshire Council of Governments. And a lot of that also goes into the Chapter 90 projects. So in order for Randall to apply to even use the Chapter 90 projects, he actually has to design and lay out all the projects ahead of time. So he's been crunched the past couple of days where he has to meet the deadlines for the Hampshire Council of Governments to get that piece done. If he misses on that to do the Chapter 90 projects, becomes a larger issue, because then we have to go out to procurement ourselves.
So I'm wondering what the total is that he's working on now for those projects.
I don't have the answer to that
Like
question.
if it's $100,000, then we need to be figuring out, how
Well,
else to spend it.
That's why I'm saying, why don't we table what the Heather's on right now for our next meeting?
Yep.
And have Randall here to explain to us what he's doing that's in the pipeline that may spend that money in the coming year.
And in the interim, I don't know if you know the answer, if not, maybe Randall could get it, but can we hire some outside help with these projects and use that as part of the Chapter 90 funding to get these projects done?
How are you going to pay the outside help?
That's
With the
what I'm
Chapter
asking.
90 is what he's
Chapter
thinking,
90.
I think.
If you need an engineer, if you need somebody to do the design work, and we've got $1.2 million sitting there.
2017.
But you know what I mean, yeah. And it costs us $60,000 to hire somebody, that's probably money well spent. And then it'll also allow us to go after this up to another $400,000.
So I think we're good on this item, and we're gonna put it on for the next agenda. I'll invite Randall and have him come and give an update on Chapter 90, and we can further talk complete streets.
So would you ask him if that's a possibility?
Absolutely, I have the question
Great, thanks.
charted down. Annual town meeting, so we have articles that we're working on for that piece, including, I did check with town council, the net solar metering credits thing is going to be an article that we have to put forward to the town, or they strongly recommend, I would say. I don't think it's a mandatory, but I think it's a strong recommendation to do so. Other things, projects and legal review, just to give people an update of where we are with this and the board of what we can talk about here. Personnel policy procedures had finished with their review book, or their policy book rather. We've sent it to town council to take a look at it, and then I believe the PPB will put an advertisement out, send copies to everyone with the modified version from town council, and then set up a public hearing and give them ample time. I do believe they're hoping to wrap it up by the end of this fiscal, my understanding from the Triple PB.
Will that be posted to our website, the electronic version, so people?
Oh, yeah, we can put it up there. As soon as we're waiting to get it back from town council, because as you know, if we're missing anything, if there's any provisions that we have that aren't something they recommend us moving forward with, or if, there's a parental leave act that we missed somewhere along the lines, we want to make sure it's inclusive. Greenway negotiation, that's always still on the table. We have solar net metering credit contract that's currently being reviewed by town council. We also have, let's see what else is currently in the system. Other things that are in the system, we have an unemployment case that just finished up in district court. We're waiting to see if it's appealed. And we have 3 MCAD cases that are currently in process. Any other questions on that, to the extent to which I can speak in public? Fantastic. Okay, upcoming weeks. Just to give you an idea of what's on the agenda here. We have the department head meeting on Thursday. We're being visited by John Jacobs, who's the gentleman from Jacobs and Associates, something DIJ, I forget the name of his company. He's the gentleman who is doing the wage and classification organizational chart. So he will be visiting the department head meeting on Thursday just to tell people what we're working on and get their feedback and make sure everyone's on the same page. We also have the Community Compact IT Regional Grant with the other Hampshire regional communities. So Westhampton, Chester, Goshen, and the like. And we're working on that. That was another, actually, so if you count that, we're on 4 Community Compact cabinets, which I think we're the most of anyone in the state, which is kind of cool because you're only allowed 3. So we'll be talking to them about IT. Essentially, the idea is to have someone paid to come in from the outside and kind of go through all of our IT structure and say what's working, what's not working, what needs to be amended, and here's the plan to do so. So we actually have a feasible plan in our hands. We know our IT is not the top of the line. It's, duct tape, doing the best we can.
So how much is that gonna cost?
That doesn't cost us anything. It's a grant from the state.
Yay.
So if we ever wish to implement things, that's where the money comes in. But in the meantime, to tell us how to do it, no cost. Let's see, visits by the town by Bernie Lynch. Bernie Lynch is the gentleman from Paradigm Community Associates. He is formerly a town manager and filled in numerous communities, both in Merrimack Valley and central Massachusetts. Very well known in town manager land, municipal government for numerous years. He'll be making a couple stops. He sent out an email this week to all the department heads to let them know that he will be in town and would like to start to spend about 30 minutes with each of them. He is the gentleman who's looking at the organizational structure of the town, or the governmental structure rather, I guess is the right word, and also formatting a draft charter. When we spoke the other day, he did mention that there's 2 ways to go through doing a charter. Number 1 is you can form a charter commission. Number 2 is you do the draft charter. You have public meetings, public review, and then you go to town meeting to approve it for a special act of legislation. Any questions on that? Cool. Utilization of broadband infrastructure is a meeting I'm going to, as well as we have an Eversource evening meeting. I have no other details on, I don't remember. I just remembered on my calendar.
Basically, Eversource is going to explain to us how they respond to emergencies and deal with power outages. And it's a good forum for police, fire, DPW, just to be aware.
And next Thursday, I will be out of town at a small town administrators of Massachusetts meeting on the other part of the state. We carpool a bunch of us, so we try to keep mileage down for everybody. Green Communities is later, and I think that's it for me right now. Any questions, folks?
I do have a question.
Okay, Charlie. Go ahead.
It pertains to the transfer station. Have we had any more incidences of medical waste?
Not that we have been formally notified of.
Good. And what did that cost the town? About $1,200?
We'd have to check with Randall. I do not, the amount of the bill was not communicated to me at this point. I don't know if we've received it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, just a concern and making sure everyone that's listening to this understands the fact that that is a big no-no.
Okay.
Any other questions for Heather?
I actually do. I just keep going back to the IT. So I understand the grant, they're just going to surmise like what options we have and how we can decipher which department needs IT help. But who's doing it right now? And how much is it costing us?
So right now, we do 99% of our IT, I would say we do in-house, between myself and Art. If between the 2 of us we can't figure it out, then we call in Northeast IT. So we will have them come in. We've had a lot of things lately, a lot of issues. I think we got most of the Outlook stuff underway. Most of the computers are all updated. Next fiscal year, we will update the remaining of those so that all computers, at least on this side of the building, excluding Council on Aging because they do their own thing, will include computers that are pretty much the same Dell, Optiplex, all Windows 7 or higher, and all Office 2013 or higher, and all purchased in the past, we'll say about a year and 3/4 because of the timing in the fiscal when we purchased them.
So how much does Northeast charge? Is it an hourly rate, or
I
do we have a
imagine they
contract
charge
with them,
well
or
over
what's-
$100 an hour when we call them. Hence, we try not to call them whenever humanly possible. We do not have a contract with anyone at this moment on IT. Reason we don't, we sat down about a year and a half ago, myself, Art, and a few other people, and I can't even tell you who was in the meeting at that time. What I can tell you is when we sat down and had these discussions and went through over and over, it always came down to someone wants us to pay them several $100s a month so they can monitor my computers from their home base. And then additional hours for them to come or on top of that. It wasn't something more so like a retainer where they cover anything up to a certain amount. that wasn't the case. We haven't found that service. We're kind of hoping that this exploratory community compact IT grant with the region will help us open new doors and see things and other possibilities.
And what's the timeline on that, again, the grant?
On the IT grant?
Yeah,
I don't know, I did not apply for it. We're simply just a recipient.
okay, so until then, we're just relying on Northeast if we have a problem you can't handle, and,
So Northeast generally handles what we can't handle.
right, so that we're just relying on them right now.
We only budget like $8,000 a year for IT service. $8,000 a year does not get, I mean, if Art and I went into our own side business, we'd make more than $8,000 a year.
But, yeah, I'm just concerned with, if they do something that disrupts our service, or you're touching it, too many hands in the pot, I mean, who's responsible? Do we go back to them and say, hey, you didn't do this, or do we come to you? I mean, you know what I'm saying? We're vulnerable not having a clear-cut program here for the IT, don't you think?
Northeast IT is a fairly well-known company.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with their company. I'm just saying that we need to have a,
What she's doing is managing the risk in-house and then calling a consultant to see if there's something they can find that she couldn't or Art couldn't.
We don't go beyond troubleshooting. So if we can't troubleshoot it, we call.
And troubleshooting is usually something, I have an IT person that works with me that can figure it out. If it's usually something a less computer literate person doesn't know, where somebody with some computer literacy will say, oh, all you need to do is go here, here, and here. I'm assuming that's what you're doing. Typical.
We actually called them one day for something that we could have done in-house had we realized we could have done it in-house. It was the back door into the email. So,
but there's a lot of, it's town history, it's people's personal,
there is no personal anything. All records kept by the town are public record. So there is no personal. If someone keeps personal email in their email, unfortunately for them, they're using a public service. It's no different than Hillary Clinton.
oh, God.
So let's learn that lesson.
No, I'm just saying that their address, where they live, it's all there. I mean, I just hope that it's secure and we're not.
People's addresses and where they live are public record unless they're a police officer in the town in which it's restricted on the census. I understand where you're going, Jackie, but unfortunately the information's there. I have access to everything now. It doesn't matter.
I understand what you're saying. The alternative is to contract with someone and have a set cost every single month that we, A, can't really afford, and B, this has been working so far for the last few years.
Well, I would see.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering what your suggestion is.
My suggestion would be that we make sure that we allocate some funds. It's a really important thing, that people's history, their livelihood, it's here and it should be protected. I mean, you could leave tomorrow, or, I just think we need something more professional to do this. Not saying that you're not professional.
So I'm
and I
happy to
appreciate
stop
your
doing
time,
all
but-
IT work and we can bill out all of the stuff so Art and I can stop tomorrow if that's.
So I guess I wonder how much it would cost. How much would it cost the town for us to have an IT person and remove that responsibility from the hands of a volunteer and the town administrator? How much would it then cost the town to have someone on call on a daily basis to come into the building and troubleshoot the problems and fix any and all problems? What is that cost compared to what the cost is now for the system that we're using?
It's gonna be the cost of an employee. Because to have someone who's available at all times and who will troubleshoot all problems, you're going to be paying an IT employee, which is gonna start you, if you pay them really low, at 20 hours a week, you're gonna look at $37,000 at least for someone who knows even remotely what they're doing.
Vicki, what were you?
The $37,000 figure, because that's pretty close to what I make, so
Well, I mean, I think we should just look into it because it's
We have a
important.
problem with
and
that, too.
I don't think volunteers should be doing it.
How does the board wish to proceed? should I continue doing what Art and I are doing, or do you wish me to cease all further IT operations? And just to let you know, we are getting low on our budget this year for our services, so please advise.
I'm content with the way things are happening now, although I'm happy to hear a motion.
I make a motion that they maintain their volunteerism to maintain the computers as best they can, with the understanding that if they need technical assistance, they will reach out for technical assistance. And I would like Heather, when she has a free moment, which means this is not a priority, check with a few of the communities about this size and see what they do. See what the cost actually is to take and hire out.
So there's a
Not by the
motion,
podium, you're not recognized.
there's a motion on the floor to continue with the process we're using currently, which is Heather and Art as volunteers and calling Northeast IT as needed. Is there a second
I'll second it.
for further discussion?
I'll second it. I think we should take the word volunteer out, because ours is volunteer, but the others, you know.
Well, that's what I meant. Sorry.
And just to note on these things that are day-to-day operations, if you were going to pay someone to do them, that means anytime we lose power, you have to go down and reset the old server. That means anytime there's a glitch, you have to go downstairs and reset a switch. That means if Liz is working here and she forgot her password, you need to go downstairs to the server and reset it. So these things that seem small and seem simple, that aren't mindful to us at all because they're moment or two tasks, become costly when you have to have someone come in to the building to do so.
We have people at school who are, I mean, we have an IT director.
I'm
and
not advocating that somebody's here 24/7. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, in general, we should have all of the personal information for the town in computers, and I just want to be assured that that information is stored correctly. Do we have it backed up? I mean, what's...
Where's our server? Is it located here?
We have a server on site, and we use Carbonite for our backup. So we pay an annual subscription fee to Carbonite to back everything up.
How much?
How much do we pay? I don't have the figure in front of me. It's not that expensive. I think it was $1,000 or something in that line, which is nothing to have stuff backed up. And Carbonite, if you look out there, it's one of the best services available. Highest rated.
There's a motion on the floor, and there's a second to continue with the process we've been using. Is there any other discussion?
I guess add one thing is, I don't know how far down the future, but as we have vacant positions, whatever they may be, maybe that we start looking at combining some IT functions with a position. And I don't know what position, but it's just something as we go along.
That's a great idea.
Okay. Any other comments or concerns?
No, I mean, Charlie was saying that he wanted to know what other communities are doing, and I would second, or I would
That was
agree
in the
with that.
motion.
Right, okay, so, yeah.
So continue with the way we're doing things now and find out what other communities are doing.
Right.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Anything else from your town administrator report?
Not on this town administrator report, but I just want to bring something to your attention. Later on in the piece, under action discussion, I omitted an item agenda that's pretty important when you get there. I did just discuss with the town clerk on this piece. So I have copies for folks. Black Birch Vineyard is doing an alteration of premises. They properly advertised in the newspaper. They properly sent out all of their butter notifications through certified return receipt. I would ask that when we get to that section, if the board would consider hearing the applicant and anyone who came to speak on that matter, but then holding off on making a decision till the next meeting so we can properly post it that a decision will be made that day. So for some reason, if someone else comes and says, I have this, I have to make this comment on this, they have the opportunity to do so before the board deliberates on the matter.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to skip select board updates and reports from yes.
I was hoping it would take just a minute. I need to check one of the microphones up there. One of the microphones is not working.
Oh, is it mine?
No.
Oh.
Maybe mine's, I got a couple texts.
Okay.
I'd like to check that.
Sure. So how long do you need?
Maybe 5 minutes.
Okay, so we're going to come back at 7:15. Sorry.
Paul, let me check into here, because
I just keep kicking it, and I hear it making noises. standard, well, actually, I'm skipping the board commission reports, department updates, and moving on to CI two, CI 1A. Vicky, you're up.
That's better.
That one right here.
That made sense.
Okay.
She's gonna talk about, give us our monthly budget update.
On a side note with the town report, which I don't think this has happened, but there is a mass general law that says if the town report is not completed by the town meeting, each individual selectman is charged $50 of their own personal money to pay for it not being completed.
So let me just tell you folks at home, that if you're listening and you are the chairman of a board, commission, committee, or otherwise, please send in your town reports immediately.
Not that that has ever happened, but there is a law that says that
Let's not
you can do
start
that.
this here.
So I'm just
We
letting you
can
know.
charge the other committees?
No, and you cannot pay for it from town funds, so, just to let you know.
So,
Just like the other piece, if you overspend your budget, there's a $1,000 fine and you could go to jail for a year.
So a supplemental revenue source.
Which
kind of.
has never happened either, but that is also a mass general law that people need to kind of
So-
understand, so.
So let me get this right. You get up there and the first thing you do is threaten us?
I'm just trying to get you guys so that you don't be surprised by this and that you get everyone to get their stuff in on time, so. Not that that would happen, but,
So I'm losing money just sitting here, you're telling me?
no. As archaic as some of the laws may be, it is on the books and it was on my test.
Thanks for
so.
bringing that up to the public, by the way.
Hey, it's my job.
So it was.
So we're ready for our update now.
What would you like me to update now?
Tell us how things are going, what does it look like going forward, and is there anything that looks alarming?
Well, I am going through, I'm gonna go through, as I periodically do, once we get to this point in the year, to go through the wage lines of, like, the police, the highway, you know, assessors, town clerk, you know, anyone who has hourly wages, you know, health agent, and all those, the library and whatnot, to make sure that they're gonna kind of be on track. But we had just, the payroll is probably in front of you to sign, and we don't normally submit it and post it to Ledger until it's signed. So, you know, I'll go through that and obviously let the departments know, you know, be a little more careful, or, you know, how do you think you're gonna work this? And so people like the library could, you know, potentially, they should have enough money based on conversations that Barbara and I had. I'm just using them as an example. They can stagger their staff, you know, or Randall could stagger his staff based on whatever dollars he may have left. So, but everything, for the most part, you know, kind of looks on track. The only thing that is like our Larrabee custodial expenses only has $14.52 in it. And that would be for cleaning supplies for this particular building. And town hall, custodial expenses for the old town hall doesn't have any money left. That's completely spent. So those are two areas that, you know, we definitely need to make sure if we are going to spend it, it needs to go to Finance Committee first before you actually spend it, and then you bring it to me for payment. People have a tendency to spend it, oh, there's not enough money, then they go to Finance to ask for the money, and you really should do it first. Knowing that you don't have that much money left, you really should be looking at your budget line items to know whether you should actually spend that money or not. And some things are, some things you don't necessarily have any control over, but we have to make sure that that process kind of stays in place. But other than that, on the expense side, everything looks, for the most part.
I'm just looking at dollars. I know, John, you always look at the percentage.
Yep.
So I notice Vicki doesn't have much left in her expense line. I don't think, the Board of Health doesn't have much left in their expense line, about $244.
Town clerk doesn't have a lot of money left in hers either.
So you're trying to take a class right now?
No, I took the class, but I didn't charge any mileage because there wasn't enough money in there, so. ended up carpooling because I knew there wasn't going to be enough money in there, so.
So can you finish it, though? I mean, you're all,
The class is finished, the Massachusetts Accounting Association has the school in March, and they have an annual meeting in the fall, an annual meeting in June, like, winter, summer type of thing. And there's one that's in June, but it's on Cape Cod, so that's something maybe in the future would be interesting to attend.
So,
I'm gonna bring that up tonight.
go ahead, I'm just gonna keep looking here.
The other piece is, I don't want people to get into the habit of, I have extra money, so let me see what I can spend my money on. If it's something that you need, great, but, I have $234, and so it's like, the nature is to, okay, well, what can I buy? Because I have $234 left. You really should only be buying what you absolutely need, because that really sends the wrong message to people, like,
Right.
and I think what has happened in the past has been, well, you didn't spend it all, so we're not going to give you that same money next year. But if we're taking a different approach to the budget and we're looking at each budget as its own entity to say, what is it that you really need next year, you shouldn't feel like you have to spend it all, because, again, we're going to look at it as a different whole to say, well, what is it that you need this year? What kind of expenses do you have? Do you need a new what kind of supplies you need, what kind of classes you need to take. We'll take it as a whole. I think that's been our approach the last year or so. And I would hope that we would continue that forward so people wouldn't be afraid to be like, oh, I got to spend this money because they're not going to give it to me next year. Those types of things, so.
All right, do you have questions for Vicki from the board? Charlie? Jackie?
do you have any problems with getting enough information from departments, and not even just about spending, just about other things?
People are good about bringing us their bills, and Joyce will kick it back if there's not enough information. Again, we have to read it, we always try to reiterate with people, we can't pay statements, we can only pay invoices. They have to have dates, they have to have details. It just can't say professional services or electrical work, because that really doesn't tell me what we did. And again, people might think it's a big deal to go back and get it, but when it comes back on the audit, they come back to me. They come back to my office. And so we try to prevent that. And it also looks bad on the town if they happen to pull their sample sizes and we didn't do these things right. And so we want to make sure that we do all those things up front.
One thing we talked about earlier, I just want to bring up, is the fact that the bills are being paid, right? The bills are being paid before we sign the warrant? Is that true?
They are.
So we need to,
You guys need to
We
make
need
a
to-
better effort to come in and sign it.
before, so the bills, the warrant that we're going to sign tonight, those bills are already paid. So it doesn't matter what we say about it, they're done.
Can't take them back.
Right. So we need to make sure that we're getting up to Vicki's office.
Well,
On
actually,
the
Donna
off-
will have it in her
Donna's office.
because she'll send the checks out, but you really should
Right.
sign it before she sends them
So
out.
you have to come in on an off week to make sure they're signed, because it doesn't make any sense the way that it's happening right now.
And that, when I went to school in March, that was a big thing. They tried to stress certain things like your bills get paid on time, your payroll is complete, all that needs to be signed and signed, sealed, and delivered, so to speak, before
Right.
any actions happen. And so
I
whether
mean, so we can
that's-
sit here and look at these all day long, but it's not going to make a difference.
whether or not that you put it on your calendar, you need a phone call, whichever.
Right.
We can do that. I wouldn't suggest switching the process, because then it's a lot of work for department heads to do payroll and bills in the same.
No, but
That's
you
a lot
could,
for them.
you could stop in on an off week and look at the warrants and sign if you approve.
Correct.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
town hall is open what hours?
Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4. Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 4.
And that be the problem. Some of us work a full day.
How'd you spell that?
Goes beyond it.
I'm just, okay, so it's just a point of,
And it's no one's fault, and that's just what the law says.
Right.
And there's no,
But we were in the past, you were emailing, not you personally, but somebody at town hall was emailing or texting me for signatures.
Right, I would come in every time
I mean, I can
Heather
do
would
that.
ask.
If somebody
Yeah.
just sends me a text,
Yeah,
I
I come in.
I think, Charlie, what happened was I gave up after I did this like week after week, and even at my best attempt, I still only got 2 out of 3 needed signatures.
So-
So it just became, that unless it's something the board is aware of, like, we come in every day sometime after 2, every other Tuesday, and sign these, or first thing in the morning on Wednesday.
Yeah, my problem
Wednesday,
is
yep.
my schedule changes every day.
It
All right, so
does.
it's just
Well,
something to keep
going
in the
by
back of
here
your
all the
minds that we really need to make an effort to get these things signed so that we don't look like knuckleheads mailing
No,
bills
but
out.
it falls on you guys if it's not done.
Exactly.
I mean,
So-
so.
Is there another $50 fine here?
There might be $100
It's
fine.
$100.
But let me ask,
It's not, it's not a fine, but.
from a practical point of view, we have 4 select board members. And I can't make, because I don't get out till 5 o'clock. The 3 of you able to come in before?
I come in when I'm asked.
Okay, so
And
I
I
guess
come in when I know,
it falls on the 3 of you, which I hate to say. I mean,
but we're losing
If
one of the
so-
3 of us.
right, so we need a 5th select board member here.
Okay, do you have any other updates about the budget? Anything else we need to be aware of? Any other comments or concerns?
You mean the budget like now or the budget that's coming up?
Both. Both.
I think the budget that's coming up for 17, there's quite a bit of money that is gonna have to be cut one way or the other. And as a group, I'm hoping we can come to a consensus to kind of be fair and equitable to who needs which money, which years and whatnot, because it's gonna be tough to cut the amount of money that potentially first pass that we're looking at, so.
What's that number?
With what people presented to us in terms of what their wish list was, you're looking at $766,000.
Okay.
You know, and that is included, you know.
Does that include second shift
That
money?
includes second shift, that includes, you know, all the police and the overtime, that includes, the school with the principal's budget, which is higher because of the new academic requirements for science, which is like $36,000 and some change for those books. So it includes that budget from the principal from Norris. It includes the $1 million from Smith Vocational, you know, the full $248,000 for the school busing,
Okay.
you know, more money for electricity and utilities and
Lots of
whatever
things.
else, lots of things. So
Okay.
it's not going to be easy.
Are a lot of those one-time costs that'll disappear next year? Like the books, will that disappear, the 35,000?
Potentially it could.
So we could
Because the teachers,
differentiate that?
what, you know, Principal Pluto was telling us was that what happens is they get the original materials. Not all the teachers use all the materials, so they photocopy stuff for the kids instead of actually giving them a workbook. Because they don't use everything in that workbook,
Right.
and so they try to make do that way.
I would just like to note that the school's on a paper ration because there's no more paper, because there's no textbook, so everything needs to be photocopied.
Which
So
is
there is no
expensive.
more paper at school. Fun.
Oh, oh, oh.
I have a new microphone, I didn't even notice.
And when businesses, local businesses try to donate boxes or cases of paper to the school, we're told that we're sabotaging their plan of trying to get a new copier.
Interesting.
So they don't accept the paper? I would,
So the lunch lady doesn't know it all. Just saying.
Yes, I don't either, but then again.
Okay. So, we have a lot of money to cut. You're working on the,
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think, you know, if we can kind of come to a consensus of, you know, hopefully, but I don't know if you guys have any other questions.
I have none. Anybody else?
no, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vicki. Is anybody from the assessors here? Negative. Treasurer?
Hi.
Hi.
So things are going pretty well in my office. We're always very busy. We just sent out the second cycle of water bills from our office. And hopefully the next quarter, we'll be having the bills online so people can pay online like they do for the real estate and personal property and motor vehicle for water as well. And we have about 7,000 motor vehicle bills that were just due last week. And so anyway, there's never a dull moment in our office.
Excise tax, is it up over last period, or?
Well, the first commitment in the calendar year, which we send them out generally in February, is the biggest one. And then we send out batches every other month or so when the registry sends them to us.
Okay.
As people, change vehicles and things like that. So, it's really hard to say right now this is our biggest one of the year, but it continues all year, so.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Not on that, thank you, but on the water department debt exclusion, did you get a chance? You said you're going in 2 weeks to talk to?
We have a meeting with our financial advisor in a couple weeks to talk about the,
Yep. On the 19th.
thank you.
Talk about refinancing the debt. However, I think there's like 5 loans, somewhere around 5 different loans that they have. And I think at least 3 of them are with Mass Water Pollution, they might have renamed it now, but was Mass Water Pollution Abatement Trust or the USDA. Some of them can't be, the Mass Water Pollution Abatement Trust ones, they do their own refunding and whatever, like we can't refinance those loans. So you're only looking at the other 2. It might end up, we'll have to wait and see what he says. As I said, I've looked at it about 2 years ago, talked to the financial advisor about doing something, and if they were looking at a new project and they could roll in a new project, and you're talking more money and then restructuring the entire thing, it might make more sense to do it at that time, but we're just going to have to wait and see what he says. So we'll meet with him and talk to him, but.
Okay, and what about the debt exclusion for the town? Can we reevaluate any of those loans that we've taken out for different projects?
I did that with the school loan a couple of years ago, but a lot of them are, he has looked at them. We talk about it when we meet, but it's not anything that's between the cost of the cost involved in doing a new borrowing, the fees involved, and the bonding, if it's a big loan. It doesn't make sense because you're still going out for 20 years or whatever, and the rates are still going to be.
Are they lower? They must be lower than the original rates that we took them out, right? Now?
Well, that's the thing. Like with the 1-year notes that I do, like for the Halloween storm, how I have to go out and borrow every year and we pay it down. The only reason we have such a low rate is because I do it every year. If we financed it out for 5 years when we initially had incurred the debt, then we wouldn't have gotten a 0.5% loan because they don't know what the rates are going to do, so the banks aren't going to loan you money for that low of a rate. So when you're going out 25 or 30 years on something, even if the rate today might be 2.5 or 3%, it's not going to be that. You might get that for 2 years and then it's going to go up, so.
We can't get a fixed rate?
Some of the loans have a fixed rate. Some of the loans have, the way the banks do it, it might be fixed for so many years and then in 10 years it goes up 0.25% for 10 years and then, they're structured differently.
Right.
So.
Any other questions? Concerns? Comments? Okay. Thanks, Donna.
Thanks.
Open time for the public. Anybody out there? Feel free to come to the podium. I don't need to call on you. Come on up. Hi, George.
I've got much to say, but I'm going to save it for another day. In your last meeting, the 3 of you voted to place a treasurer collector question back on the ballot. Ballot number 2, question number 2, right? I thought we voted that down. I thought the citizens in this town voted no.
When it was brought up last time, which was a few years ago?
It was last year. It passed at annual town meeting to be put on an override ballot. It was put on the override ballot in July, where it failed.
Where it failed.
Where it failed.
The people who voted it down at the town meeting, right, also got a chance to vote on it again on the ballot, didn't they?
If they were at the town meeting, they could have voted in July, yes.
Yes. and it still got voted down. What are we doing running this thing again?
So
Please elaborate.
because you're not allowed to vote on an override question at that point.
Wait a
You
minute.
have to vote. Heather, if you could give the correct, thanks.
No, what this really is BS, okay? The citizens of this town voted no on this question, whether you like it or not. Comes up again, and it's gonna come up, and if it gets voted down again, what do you do then?
Then I keep trying.
Oh, is that the way it's gonna be?
That's my opinion, yes. It's been my opinion since the moment I stepped on the board. I really, truly believe that the town accountant who just stood in front of us needs to have.
Town accountant?
Town treasurer needs to have serious qualifications to hold that position.
Well, I hate to tell you this, there are people out there who could do the same job.
And I would
I know-
prefer to know what their qualifications are before they're in that office.
Oh. So, what really comes down to, the voters don't have any say in it.
Well, you do have say.
Well, we do have a lot of say, or some say, when you try for an override. I don't think you should have put this on the same ballot as question number 2, because question number 1 is looking for $135,000. And there are a few people out here, including myself, that are a little miffed about this. We voted it down.
Well, at town meeting, actually, it passed.
Right.
It passed at town
passed at
meeting.
town
On the
meeting.
ballot, it didn't.
So we're half and half.
Right.
No, it's not half and half.
Yeah.
No, it's not half and half, because the same people who were at the town meeting got to vote on the ballot again, and they were voted down.
Well,
Now, this is, this kind of logic is great, but you can work it out in your own head. That's not the case.
But that's why we
The
have,
3 of you voted for this thing,
we agree.
and you ought to be ashamed, really.
But that's in the,
Because of citizens in this town who voted no, their votes do not count, because that's what you're telling us.
not at all.
That's exactly what that's the message you sent.
so
That's the message you sent.
we
period.
have talked about this on more than one occasion, George,
Yeah.
and I know
don't-
your
No,
opinion.
that has nothing to do with what I'm doing standing here,
Okay,
okay?
fair enough.
All right?
But part of the thought is, maybe we didn't explain it enough. So,
Explain, wait a minute. That's like overrides. If we don't explain it enough,
no,
maybe we can sell this.
but George,
Maybe you can't. There's a lot of people out in this town, we'll get on the other subject, are tight with money. Maybe some of you people are making $95,000 a year, $75,000 a year, maybe $150,000. There are some people in this town who live on budgets, period. And those are apparently the people who are voting no.
but George, that's a
It's
good
a very
reason.
good reason to have an appointed treasurer.
Right.
Because if you have an elected
Well, if you
treasurer
have an
who
appoint-
doesn't know what they're doing, then they're
Oh,
not
right, here we
managing
go.
your budget well.
Got a treasurer. All she has to do is keep running, keep doing the job
But
she's
what if
doing.
she,
But
what if she leaves?
doesn't? What if
We'll
she
have somebody
leaves?
else and we'll deal with it
And we
then.
take our chances?
Yeah.
Well,
But
George,
if you appoint, let me ask you something. If you appoint somebody, you make them permanent. This is what you're gonna do, right?
With a contract.
Oh, what a contract.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna pay them benefits, aren't we?
We pay her benefits.
we pay our
You're
benefits.
paying benefits now?
Yeah.
Okay. Huh?
Won't
But
cost
that's
us
beside
any
the
more.
point.
No, it's
People
not.
voted it down.
You brought it up, so it is part of the point.
Yeah. And maybe, no matter how you look at it, it was still voted down.
Right, but think of it,
Debate situation here.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
never mind, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you still want me, or am I null and void?
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak at open time for the public? Moving on. We're moving past the Board of Health update. They've asked to be given the opportunity to speak at our next public safety check-in in June. Mr. Is it Walmsley? Wamsley? Is it Walmsley? Well, I tried. So Mr. Walmsley was here at our last meeting. We had a few questions for him regarding the Cook and County Road project, and he's here to give us a quick update. I
Sure.
hope.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm ready.
Again, Mark Walmsley, Kestrel Land Trust. Nice to see you all again this evening. Just a few updates really quick. The main one right now is I'm working feverishly to complete the Community Preservation Committee application, and we'll be presenting tomorrow afternoon on that, and that is going well. The other bit of news, which I just heard this weekend, is the state has announced the next round of the land grant, finally. The application deadline for that will be July 15th. And the plan is to put together an application for both the land grant and the drinking water grant. I also attended a workshop with the administrator of that grant this weekend, and I let her know that this may be coming down the pike, and so she knows it's potentially on her agenda. So that's great. Then, yeah, I just wanted to follow up. I know the board had questions at our last meeting. I sent around an email trying to address some of those. So I could go through them, or I can just
Would
give
you mind
clarification.
paraphrasing them for us, just so we?
So
There
everybody
were
can
three
hear.
that or would
Yes.
you? Or-
No, I was just saying, so everybody at home can hear also.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. The main concerns, as I remember them, were the language of the CR and the fact that another community will own a CR on Southampton town land. There was questions about liability in particular related to that. Those were kind of the two main ones. And then I believe the last question was in regard to the cost split
Yep.
of the town. Do I have those correct?
Yep.
So again, I did a little bit of digging on all of these, and it was interesting. The history that I managed to dig up, I found personally interesting, at least. I looked into some past conservation projects in the town of Southampton, particularly collaborative conservation projects with Easthampton and actually Holyoke as well. And I discovered that the situation which you were concerned about is actually already in existence in Southampton. Not exactly, because, well, to get into it, there were 4 projects that Southampton collaborated in where the CRs are now shared by the towns of Easthampton, Southampton, and Holyoke on land that is in all those towns, that straddles those towns. And they didn't actually divvy up which portion of the property each town was responsible for. So technically, since it's a joint holding of the CR, everyone's already overseeing CRs on each other's land. The main difference is with the Cook and County Road project, of course, is that this is going to be a fee acquisition. This is going to be town-owned land. And those other projects, the land is still held privately with the municipalities holding CRs on the land. So a little different, but I think there are some similarities. The other point, which I was remiss not to mention last time, was this is an issue that the town of Southampton is going to run into with any project when you acquire land in fee with CPA funds. The CPA requires municipality to have an outside entity hold the CR on the land, whether that is another municipality, whether it's the state, whether it's a private land trust. So this is, again, something that you're going to run into anything when you acquire fee land with the CPA. And that's an added requirement of protection. That's how it's seen. Because normally, of course, a municipality can acquire conservation land and protect it under Article 97 as conservation land. But the CPA added, again, this other requirement on top of that, that there be a CR as well, just as, again, another added layer of protection. So those were two of the main aspects. I also looked into CR language as well, in particular regarding to liability. And I actually spoke with our attorney, who was also consulting with the state on this model CR language for the Commonwealth. And she reassured me that the language is really fairly malleable as it comes to liability. Someone has to be responsible for the CR and enforcing the CR, or else if the CR had no teeth, there would be no point in having a CR. But when it comes to liability, again, it is fairly malleable. The biggest issue you usually run into is third-party violations on a property of the CR. Someone comes and dumps on a property. Someone comes in and tries to do something. Honestly, how that works most of the time is the CR holder, if it's a CR holder in the town, they usually kind of work it out and work together. It never gets to any sort of, it never gets to court. It never gets to a suit. But I did provide language that I had just negotiated with the city of Northampton on this exact issue. And their particular issue, they were concerned about third-party liability. And you can see what we came up with, and I can provide copies of that again. It was very favorable to the town. Basically, the town would not be liable for third-party violations of the CR if they had taken reasonable management to prevent whatever was going on. So if they knew there were ATVs coming and entering on a trail, that they tried to put up a gate or tried to put up rocks, and if they did that and the ATVs still got around, that's okay.
A random dumping of chemicals, we wouldn't be responsible for under that CR, as I remember it, because we couldn't know that was coming.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you and the CR holder could work together to try and prevent it, or or clean it up,
right?
Or you would assign, at least in the case of that language, assign it to the CR holder to be able to pursue them singly for the violation. But you'd be pursuing, or in this case, Easthampton would be pursuing the third party not the town of Southampton.
Right.
Unless the town of Southampton was the violator, which I mean, I guess could happen, but it usually doesn't.
Yeah, I like the way that wording was. From my point of view, it gives us more flexibility on the liability.
Sure. And again, if there's a particular element of it, again, that is something that could really be worked out with an attorney. Again, it seemed very flexible, as long as someone has a right to pursue violations.
But if someone dumps on the property and we don't find the person that dumped on the property, the holder of the property is responsible.
That's an interesting question. I have to look that one up.
Talk to DEP, they've done that enforcement many a times, it ends up being the property owner.
It's a good, yeah.
So if that's the case, can we put something in the CR that says, if we can't find the third party, and it's neither the first or the second party, then the first and the second party share the cleanup costs?
Yeah, that could easily be done.
That's fine. I'm
Yeah,
just
that
pointing out the
could be
fact
very
that
easily be done. I've seen that before.
If you
Yeah.
assume you're gonna catch the third party, you'll find that the third party usually doesn't have the assets to pay for the cleanup. That's why the dumping
They're dumping
occurred in the
it.
first place.
I think that's a good way to put it in.
Although you sometimes run into companies and other entities that are doing that, but yeah.
All right.
But I think that's a fine resolution to that.
Okay. So, cost sharing?
The cost sharing, the conversations are ongoing. I just spoke with Jessica Allen today. I'm trying to figure out what the kind of the correct way to proceed on that is. It really seems to be a kind of town-to-town conversation or town official-to-town official conversation that needs to be done to kind of work that out. I can try and facilitate that, but, you know, I want to touch base with Heather and Jessica and see what the best way to pursue that is. But it's still on the table, certainly.
My personal opinion, knowing that we can create the CR so that the liability is not on us if it's a third party, and if we can't find it, we can share it. Cost share to me, if we can do half and half, which I think is 25 more for them and 25 less for us, I'm personally okay with that. 'Cause I think it was 300 and 350, and I'm saying 325 each.
There is a bit of a range, obviously, depending.
Well, depending on the grant.
I think the
Correct.
max for Southampton would be 386, max for Easthampton would be 338.
But basically, take the cost minus the actual grant we get and split the cost.
What was that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I personally would think I'd be okay with.
That does include all the other extras. That includes,
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Our charge and, yeah, baseline. Well, there are some fees that Easthampton also has just to put together the baseline and such.
Okay.
No?
Any other questions? I think that's a good update, so we do now we do wait. right?
Thank you. Well, you can come to the CPC meeting tomorrow if you're interested. I'll have an application. It's looking, like I said, very good. A lot of
Okay.
nice pictures. I think it's pretty compelling.
Sure.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
How does this benefit Southampton? Because it's an open space, I mean, how do we benefit?
There are a number of things which really, and it's actually really helpful. For one of the things I was doing for putting together the CPC application was going through the open space plan for Southampton and the master plan. And as I went through that, I kept seeing points that relate to this property. The main point that always comes up, and it comes to the top, and I think it's really the most important, is the drinking water aspect of it. Now, you can argue the location of the property and that this is really the sole source aquifer for Easthampton, and Southampton gets the majority of its water, public water from public wells in another area of the Barnes Aquifer. And I'm working on the exact numbers, but there are a few private wells right around this property in Southampton that may be receiving water that is affected by what goes on in this property. And remember, you weren't here for the last meeting, the most recent appraisal of the property, which went up, but again, the family agreed to a bargain sale, which was very wonderful. But the most recent appraisal said that 12 houses would be allowed to be developed on this property. So we're talking a pretty dense development on this 25 acres, which really, I think, just ups the ante in terms of protecting it. So again, really, it comes down to drinking water, I think, is the primary topic, the primary goal of protecting. And it really became clear to me, again, reading through those public documents from the town, that you look at the potential build-out scenarios that were done in the master plan for Southampton. You can say the water situation in the town is what it is now, but you're already receiving some water from Easthampton on times when you're at max capacity for here in the summer months. What happens if development continues, which it will? What happens if there's contamination somewhere in the aquifer in the future? We just don't know. I think it makes sense for the towns that rely on the aquifer to really work to protect the entire aquifer. I think everyone's going to benefit from that in the long run. So there's the water aspect. Another thing that kept coming up in both the open space plan and the master plan was the importance of the rural character and farmland for the town. And those were really often linked, I actually thought was very, very interesting. I wonder if a lot of residents, aren't necessarily involved in agriculture anymore, but still really value farms, because again, they value the scenic, the rural character of the town. This is right along a major travel route. We could even open up, I was just thinking, a long county road, that there's a lot of growth there. I mean, the town could eventually clear out a few trees and really open up the clearing so it could be seen. There's also an additional need or additional requests from residents for passive recreation and access to passive recreation. This would be expanding the Southampton Wildlife Management Area, essentially. And the town could develop interesting ways to have those two relate. Could there be a small parking area that could be expanded? Could there be a passive recreation park in that area if you wanted to? If you didn't want to continue in agriculture.
You could put a trail, maybe.
Yeah, there could be a
Could do
trail there,
trails in there?
absolutely. And again, it could be maintained as agricultural land, and I actually checked with the state what types of agriculture might be allowed, continuing, especially if we got the drinking water grant. And there might be some limitations on the fertilizer and pesticides used, but there were a number of agricultural opportunities still there. At the very least, the town could still have it hayed if they just wanted to keep it as open fields and keep the scenic quality of it. Or again, it would make a very nice, park for people to just go picnic and walk around and then continue onto the trails in the wildlife management area. So I think it is really a great deal for the town, considering the latest appraisal for this property came in at $1,160,000, and that each community is basically be paying just a third to acquire that land. I mean, to me, that sounds like a deal, given how important the land is.
And I think one thing we're not remembering is if 12 houses were built, average of $5,000 in taxes, we're going to get $60,000 in revenue, but that's not even close to what it would cost the town to support 12 more families and 12 more houses and all the infrastructure costs. So by not having those houses, I think we're gaining also.
It would double, if I remember correctly from the last meeting, that there are around 12 building permits every year, so essentially double building permits for at least 1 year.
Yeah, but I mean, I think what we're getting back in return, as we know, one family's taxes doesn't pay, one new house's taxes don't pay for all the infrastructure charges. So I like looking at the land versus 12 more houses.
And it's a beautiful property. I was
It
lucky
is.
enough to, Barbara took me, and it was just amazing. It's really absolutely a wonderful place to save and take care of.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Are there any other questions or concerns? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Green communities.
Let me skip over you.
It would take 2 minutes if you just let me.
Go.
Green Communities progress and updates, just to remind folks, we've been working and talking about this since probably about October at this point. So Green Communities is a program of the Mass Department of Energy Resources. We are looking to apply for the Green Communities designation and grant program, which gives the town money to fix things and make them more energy efficient, i.e. the roof in this building is just case in point in the first example. Just give you an update where we are with this. There's 5 criteria for this project. The 2 that are most relevant are the ones that require bylaws. Criteria number 1 required us to actually get a bylaw that allows us to have energy producing mechanisms in the community. If you remember last annual town meeting, we approved the solar bylaw. All set, good to roll. That criteria is done. Yes. So then, the other criteria we need annual town meeting vote for is actually the stretch code. For those who may not be familiar, it pertains to the building code, although the stretch code itself is actually voted in the general bylaw section. It is not a zoning bylaw, it is a general bylaw. Once upon a time, the stretch code was this crazy thing where it made regulation so much more difficult for builders. Nowadays, today's current stretch code and today's current building code are almost the same thing. There's so few differences, and a lot of communities already have moved forward with the stretch code. Why am I before the board tonight? I'm before the board tonight because I have been contacted by Jim Barry. The Board of Selectmen had the privilege of meeting with Jim Barry from the Green Community Program at the state back in October when they had their retreat. Jim Barry did a great presentation, got the board energized and excited on this program. What this means is Jim would like to actually come, and he thinks it's helpful to do a public hearing, or public meeting rather, where he comes about an hour or so and answers people's questions. It's videotaped. He goes over what the stretch code is, what the changes would be, and how it would affect local builders and anyone else in the community. they have any concerns. My question to the board this evening is how the board wishes to proceed on this. Is it the will of the board to have me set up a meeting with Jim Barry? The board does not have to be present, in which we invite the public to come. We invite ECAT to come prior to annual town meeting to provide an hour or so of an opportunity, Jim to give a brief presentation, and anyone who has questions to ask such. Board?
I thought his presentation was very good and informative, so I would be in favor of it.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
That was a motion, by the way.
I seconded it.
All those in favor of Heather setting up a meeting with Jim Barry?
Aye.
Mrs. Hamel? I went to school with Mariah. I recognize. Thank you for waiting so patiently.
Sure.
I'm sorry that you're not on the agenda for us to make a formal decision, but we would love to hear you
Okay.
and anybody who
I'll-
has any questions or concerns.
I think you all now have my paperwork that I
Yes.
did. And what we are asking for at Black Birch Vineyard is an alteration of premises so that the grass area behind what is now our tasting room is also then formally part of our premises. And so it's really not changing anything. We did make it pretty large so that if we ever do change anything and come before you again, like it's all taken care of at the ABCC. So I don't think, in terms of our neighbors, you know, it won't affect anyone any differently. Our hours are pretty reasonable, so it's not like we've got any problems that affect anyone close to us, so.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure the board is aware of what's going on here. I know this is one of the first changes to a liquor license we've done as a board. And what this is, so folks understand, under the local licensing authority, which you are, you get to hear license alteration, changes, new applications, and the like. The Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission in Boston has the final word on this, but it has to be approved by the local board first. What an alteration of premises essentially is you take the liquor license that you currently have on someone's wall, and it says exactly the description of premises. It's not a traditional description of what you'd think. It includes every place that they may have and or store alcohol. So if you go into a bar, it will say, you know, include the elevator. If they have to transport the alcohol up and down, it includes the storage room in the basement, often includes the bathrooms. It includes everything, including dimensions. These have to be very specific. What this alteration of premises would allow Mary and Black Birch Vineyard to do is they would actually have the opportunity not to have to worry about a person who's there on the premises at an event not being able to cross over a certain area, because all of a sudden, once they cross, they're outside the description of the premises. If someone were to show up from the police or from the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission as an agent just to check things out, they'd be very concerned that this is outside their scope of their license. Now, this does not mean final approval. If the board approves it, again, it goes to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission. They send someone out, they'll come inspect, they'll work with Mary, ask any additional questions. The cover sheet you have here is the checklist that's required by the ABCC. This is all the materials they require before it can even be processed. Prior to the next meeting, I will have before the board a Form 43, which is the board's decision if they are so inclined to vote to approve the license. All board members, or the majority thereof, sign the license and it goes off to Boston. We do not modify the license when it comes back until such time that's approved by the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission.
That pretty much sums it up.
She's right.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this matter? Yes, Mr. Reed. I'm wondering if you're going to say no. I didn't see your name on the abutters list. Go ahead.
Mark Reed, 166 Brickyard Road. I hope that the Board of Selectmen act favorably on this request. I think Black Birch Vineyards is a great asset for the city and the town and the surrounding area, whatever we want to call ourselves. I think they do a wonderful job, and I hope that the board acts on it and they get the modifications requested.
Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Other questions from the board?
Wrong. This is This is just a matter of record tonight, right?
Well, yeah, because we can't vote on it until the next meeting.
Heather, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Have we ever had any complaints about the vineyard?
I've been here for a little over 2 years at this point, John. We have received a complaint here and there on Route 10, but we've never received any complaints pertaining to Mary's Black Birch Vineyard.
I've heard compliments on the wine, though. Oh, no, I've had some, but not there.
I have never been. Okay, so, if there's no one who would like to speak to this, then we can make the decision at our next meeting, whether to approve or not.
Yes, if the board can just vote to table it at this
I
point.
would accept a motion to table the vote on the alteration of the permit for Black Birch Vineyard.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Until the next meeting?
Until the next meeting.
Second.
Any other discussion?
She doesn't have to be here then, I assume, right?
No.
Unless you
wanna
get
be
word,
here.
Mary, that there's 3,000 people who are very upset.
Yeah.
If I do, I'll come.
Didn't bring
Okay.
samples.
We might change their mind. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for waiting patiently for that.
Thank you.
We have the Public Safety Committee members and mission.
Oh, that's in our
So at
computer.
a prior meeting, the Board of Selectmen voted to reform the Public Safety Committee. The draft charge for the committee is as follows. Do you want me to read this?
You reading the updated
Yes.
one?
Okay. The Public Safety Complex Building Committee Charge, 2016. The committee shall consist of 9 members. How many were on it last time?
I think it was 9.
9. Consisting of a police department representative, fire department representative, fire department representative, finance committee representative, historical committee representative, 2 select board members, and 3 representatives of the community with the option of more members if needed. Members will be appointed by the select board. The terms of the office shall be for the duration of the project and/or until the committee is discharged. The committee shall report to the Board of Selectmen as required. The committee shall elect its own chair, vice chair, and clerk, and shall establish a regular meeting schedule. All records of the committee shall be filed with the town clerk and open to public inspection in accordance with applicable state statutes. The committee shall not have a direct budget of their own, but may request funds for the specific purposes through the Finance Committee and Select Board process. The Select Board shall be the final approving authority on any expenditures. Members shall serve without financial compensation. The committee shall review all past reports from prior public safety complex and building committees. The committee shall focus on the site next to the current town hall. The committee shall create biddable building plans to incorporate the police, fire, ambulance, dispatch, and emergency management departments, taking into consideration the votes at last town meeting. The committee shall work with expanding and modification of the past feasibility plan to address the concerns of the voters. The committee shall participate in the grant application process as needed. The committee shall communicate with the inspectional departments and staff during the planning process. Upon completion of the building plans, the committee shall report to the select board. The committee shall assist the select board in presentations at town meeting, budget meetings, public forums, etc. as needed. Does anybody have any questions about the charge of the committee?
I've got just 2 questions.
So,
One is, let me go back down. It says the committee shall focus on the site next to the current town hall. Can we amend that to say as the primary location, just in case something happens where they want to look at another site? It's just a technical thing, but if you already got the charge out there.
I'm okay with that.
I'm fine with that.
Jackie?
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay.
And also, it says that they shall have no budget, but one of the bullets says the committee shall create biddable building plans to incorporate. And being very familiar with Chapter 149 boilerplate, this is going to be, fairly expensive. I think last time the designer and all the plans where we got to was roughly $35,000.
Correct.
So is this meaning that we have to come back to the Board of Selectmen, or committee has to come back to the Board of Selectmen to get the money to hire somebody?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything is controlled through the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. I'm okay with that as long as we're clear.
I mean, that was the intent when I drafted this, was everything came back to the Board of Selectmen. Board of Selectmen will work with Finance. funds are allocated. If the committee came back, it still needed the Board of Selectmen's approval before it moved forward.
Okay, because the committee's not going to be able to do that much before they come back, but that's fine.
Any other questions or concerns? How does the board wish to proceed? Do you want to use this as the charge for the committee and accept applications from interested parties? Do you want to sit on it a little longer? What do you want to do?
I make a motion, we accept it as read and written.
Feel free, hold on. There's a motion on the floor to accept this as the charge for the committee and accept applications from interested parties. Is that your
Well,
motion?
that's part of the charge, to accept.
So there's a motion. Is there a second
I'll second it.
for further discussion? Vicky?
So, if I heard you correctly, you were talking about how the committee would come back to the Board of Selectmen to get money. Well, where's the selectmen going to get the money from? They don't have any money to appropriate
I
or
think that it
allocate
would
to
be, that
anybody.
it would have to be asked
It'd
for
have to
from
be asked
town
for a
meeting.
town meeting,
Yes.
all right. I don't know if you need to clarify that in there, but because the
act-
selectmen can't really just,
We can't just give you any money.
so.
If I may, there's a sentence here, if I can find it. The committee shall not have direct budget of their own, but may request funds for specific purposes through the Finance and Board of Selectmen process.
Okay, so it says the process,
What bullet point
which
are
would
you
have
on?
to go to town meeting either way, so.
Well, that's the
Oh,
process.
that's right. I see it, the process.
I just want to be clear that that's stated in there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Regionalization survey. Charlie, you have an update?
Before we go back, can
Before
we,
we go back.
before we
Before
go
we
forward? Would you cut that out? It's like an echo in the room.
Did I what?
Well, we're still in public
Town
safety.
administrator report?
No, 5A.
5A.
Yeah, she skipped it.
Oh, sorry.
In-
Yeah, it
in-
is.
In order to get this committee off the ground, I know I'm interested in being on the committee because my experience with construction law and projects. So we need to get select board members on the committee so we can start the committee, I think.
We need to get applications from other humans, otherwise 2 out of 9 is not going to get you there.
Right, but we
Well,
can
if
start
you're
with
in- if
2
you're in-
humans.
If you're interested, then
Yes.
I would accept I would make a motion to nominate you to the,
Okay.
as the,
One of the select board.
one of the select board members.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's one.
And I'm going to nominate Charlie for the second since he was involved with the first committee and has a lot of background
second
information.
committee.
So there's a
And the
motion to make Charlie the second member from the Board of Selectmen. I'll second that. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go backwards then. Thanks.
But before, what's our next step with getting the,
I think we
Oh.
need Heather
Oh.
to send a memo to
Yeah.
the departments, like police, fire,
Yeah.
what do you call it?
Already have it noted.
Okay, so they know, and then,
Just to let you guys know what I was thinking, because I know we've already got 2 residents who are interested, and there's only a few spots. I have a feeling that this is going to fill up, and this might be one where we receive numerous applications for this, and the board actually will have to make a decision to dwindle it down. I could be wrong.
since it's only going to involve 3 additional representatives, can we get the other 6 together, the select board, historical, and the others together, and form the core of the committee and let the committee interview the representatives of the community based on their experience and desire to serve?
The problem is that you just approve this as written, and it says members will be appointed by the select board.
That is
Yeah,
true.
But we can make a recommendation to the select
You
board.
could make a recommendation.
Also, if you notice in the first line, with option of more members if needed.
Right.
So
And the
you could
reason
have
that-
30 people.
Well, then it becomes the Board of Selectmen to say, wait a minute.
Yeah, but I think the committee would be a good group to at least do the first
I think
review.
that's a great idea. Okay. Now can I go backward? That's fine.
Well, as long as she,
Did you get all that, Heather?
Heather?
I haven't the foggiest clue. I think if I recall from trying to figure out the last 3 motions and where we are right now, my understanding is that you guys would like to have a letter or an email correspondence sent to the departments who are relevant to this process to accept from them who they'd like to put on the committee. Please note that before you guys can even meet, those people would have to be appointed by the board.
Right.
And then all of you, the 2 board members and all of the individuals who are reps, have to be sworn in before you can even have a meeting. And then at that point, you'll be accepting the applications of resident individuals who are interested, to which point you can review, interview, figure out, and make recommendations back to the Board of Selectmen. Is that correct
it.
understanding?
Got it.
Was that a motion, though? Because I just got
Yeah,
that from the summary.
It was. So can we do that? So maybe at our next meeting, 2 weeks from now, we can have the people come before the board?
Well, I can
from those-
send the correspondence, but this is the problem you run into with, I don't recall all the different departments on here, but I can tell you that a lot of times if it's a board, committee, or commission, they don't meet frequently, and they will not just appoint someone before they
So let's
meet.
do our best by then and update where we're at our next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sure.
Okay. So we're gonna go back to the reorganization of Town Hall 5A. Charlie?
I've been watching the traffic flow in this building, and I've been wondering why we have the town accountant so far away from the town treasurer's office, because those 2 offices interrelate with each other constantly. And I was a little concerned with the square footage, because I was thinking about the possibility of moving the town administrator to the 2nd floor, because the town administrator's office is always utilizing the meeting room upstairs for department head meetings, so on and so forth. And it seemed to me that setting it up in that manner would put our financial people all on the same floor and our administrative people all on the same floor, giving them access to another meeting room. I measured the 2 rooms up today just to see how close they were, and they're pretty close in square footage. There doesn't seem to be that much of an issue. The other question comes down to the fact that the town administrator has a private office where the town accountant does not. So I don't know how the individuals feel about this, but I wanted to put this in front of the board because looking at, like I said, the traffic flow here and the departments that are responsible to work with each other, they seem to be distanced from each other.
So my first question is, logistically, if you move Heather upstairs as the town administrator, currently she has a door on her office. So if you were to move her upstairs, where does Velda go?
I would guess Belda would be in that same office.
And so the privacy for the town administrator when they're on a phone call with town council or with the chairman of the board of selectmen or anybody is gone?
True, but the reality of it is if you were to look at the sound carrying in that private room that the town accountant has, town administrator has,
But there's a perception of privacy by
there's a
shutting the door.
perception, but not a reality. Yeah, I mean, she resonates down the hallway.
And then what about logistically how the town accountant and her assistant work? So now where do you put the files? In one place or another? Do you rip down the wall? What do you do?
You have the same number of, pretty much the same number of file cabinets in both the top and the bottom. I have, 5 or 6 in my office alone on my side of the wall, and Velda has at least 1 on her side. That's the long one.
I'll be the first one to say that I 3 years ago, we said, if you have a turnover sheet, you must walk it up the stairs to the town accountant's office. And I don't necessarily love walking up the stairs to the town accountant's office with my turnover sheet every time I come in. However, I would be curious to know who gets more residents? The town accountant or the town administrator? Because it would seem like a burden to put on our residents to have to walk up to the town administrator rather than walk in and down the hall.
Exactly, and that's exactly how I feel, because I feel like she is more accessible downstairs
To the public.
to the public, and that she can see everything, she's in the middle of everything, she sees people coming in,
And if not our focus, but if our intention at some point is to make it so that the town administrator or town manager or whatever direction we want to go is in charge of the day-to-day operations of the building, Is it easier for that person to be in charge of the day-to-day operations of the building from the second floor or from the first floor?
Yeah, she needs to be downstairs to get a hold of people in the department. I think and how much would it cost to make the move and?
Oh, nothing.
I mean, you could move your files. I mean, I'm not concerned about cost.
There's no
but-
cost. Human.
Do either of you see a pros or cons to it? I mean,
If I can jump in on this one. So a couple things. So we talk about visitors. Well, there's actually more people who are department heads, boards, committees, and commissions that would come in and visit Vicky than would actually number of residents who come in to visit me. Charlie's been in numerous days, and he can tell you either I get 3 people one day and 0 the rest of the week, or 2 throughout the week. I don't get many humans. The second thing is that when I do get humans, usually discretion, confidentiality, and privacy is all wanted. Charlie's absolutely right. Tammy hits it on the head. Yeah, I could whisper all you want, but it doesn't matter. Everyone's going to hear everything I say. We have to shut 2 doors and then have Velda scanning the halls to make sure no one's out there. Upstairs gives us the privacy. Velda actually, she signed a confidentiality agreement when she first started. She's privy to a great deal of information, not everything, but a great deal, because someone has to know the information if something were ever to happen to me. The meeting room's right across the hall. I spend a good portion of my life there. If people come up and it has to be a private meeting or something, the meeting room is right there and available to do so. One of the concerns people have had for a very long time with regards to bringing things upstairs to the accountant's office is there's been a very strong policy from the office that if you have anything and they're not there, you're to slide it under the door up there, which I'm not a huge fan of many things. Everyone likes to, when they come in, they check their mail. Fire department checks their mail. People go into the first floor. They only have a few minutes. They go in, they check their mail. I've been told numerous times that not everyone checks their mailboxes. And so people have had to actually physically walk things upstairs. Going back to the idea that you have all your financial departments on the first floor, it's actually kind of a fantastic idea because these are the departments that work together on a regular basis on a daily piece. As far as management and oversight, what people may not realize is I actually spend probably about 5% of my time, if not more, checking in with departments. I come in the morning, I start out council on aging, see how everything is going. Over the course of the day, I'm in the town clerk's office, I'm in the assessor's office, I'm in the treasurer's office, I'm in the Board of Health, I stop by building. The only office I don't spend a lot of time is in the accountant's. Why? Because it's out of the route, it's upstairs. Honestly, it gets forgot.
so it sounds like you're okay. What's your thoughts? It sounds like you're getting it sounds like you're getting the better deal. You get a private office on the first floor. That's why we asked, yes.
Listen, this building was built this way for a reason. Accounting needs quiet. It needs its own space to be able to focus and concentrate on the work that we're doing. Joyce and I work very well together in the atmosphere that we're in. If there's a wall that separates us, we can't have those conversations of, what do we do with this bill? How do we do this? That kind of thing. And we probably have about 10 file cabinets upstairs. And from what I understand is the people that moved the desk that I have upstairs said they will never, ever move that desk again. It is the heaviest piece of furniture they have ever had. So you're going to be stuck with that desk. But I don't, anywhere I've ever worked, and I've worked in accounting for 1992, we've always been separate from everybody else because that's how it functions. That's kind of how the need of that department is. And I understand it's a pain in the butt for people to walk upstairs, but if you want your bills paid, you bring them to the people who are going to pay the bills. Like, that's just how it works. It shouldn't be that I have to search people out if they want to pay their bills. The bank doesn't come to you and say, hey, let me get your bills this month because I want to pay them, right? You have to go to the bank to pay your bills. You have to go to Western Mass Electric, Eversource, whatever, credit cards. You have to pay your own bills. They don't call you up and say, hey, why don't you give me your bills because I want to pay them today. That's not the nature of how accounting works. And so I guess, I have, dealings with the treasurer's office and the assessor's office and all the other departments, but it's not that difficult to walk down a flight of stairs and talk to them about something. I mean, it's not, I have a phone right next to my desk. I have email. To walk down the stairs to take a break from what you're working on to get something isn't the most horrible thing ever.
In support of working quietly, I had a hard time with the magnet project in 3rd grade with the music in the background. TV at the same time. So I can understand the need to have a quiet space specifically when working on numbers.
Right, I mean, I wrote the word quiet down, and you said it. I mean, it seems to me the parking lot and the break room, it's all there, and there's so much traffic, and you need peace and quiet.
You know, and if people are looking for Heather's office, they're gonna stop by my office to say, hey, and that's gonna it's just gonna interrupt.
You again, yeah.
And I understand the people that come to see me are people that need to see me. They want information, they want to pay their bills, they have questions. It's easier to have a conversation one-on-one than to actually send an email about something or you know, talk about something, that kind of thing. So, and not that the auditors are here all that much, but when they're here for that week, it's easy for them to come in my office, look through my files, instead of, you know, trucking up and down the stairs to get all their information. Because really,
and Joyce doesn't want to be your secretary. Out
Joyce
there,
is
the
not my
first person
secretary.
that they're going to see, right?
no, she's not. I mean, she does her job, and we work well together that
Yeah.
way. And I don't know, it's just, it works for us.
I personally don't know why we're discussing it here. It should be something discussed, you know, at your guys' level, so I don't have an opinion, to be honest with you.
Charlie asked to have it put on the agenda, so how would you like to proceed, Charlie?
Let's table it for now.
Okay.
Because I will tell you that I will quit before you actually make me move downstairs.
And I will tell you, it's inappropriate to threaten people.
I'm just saying that. That's just, you know, I mean, people come up with these ideas and try to do all this stuff without, never mind. I'm sorry. I'm just frustrated.
Is there a motion on the floor to table?
I move the table.
Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Vicki.
Regionalization survey, Charlie.
We received a letter from the Commonwealth asking us our opinion relative to regionalization of 911. Rather than just jumping into this with Heather, the feeling was is the board should review it and decide how they want to respond to it. I think we need to get the two chiefs involved in this. If the board doesn't mind and I have the time, I'll talk to both chiefs and try to get together and get a response.
Okay. Any other concerns or questions? Do you need a motion to talk to the chiefs?
Well, I don't
Jackie.
think so, but.
Jackie?
Well, what is your, I'm just curious, Charlie, what is your definition of are you listening?
I'm sorry?
Are you listening?
I'm trying.
Okay. How do you think that'll change our services? I mean, do you think it would become impersonal? I mean, what are you trying to accomplish by?
Well, first of all, we're not initiating this.
Okay.
This is a state survey going out to all the communities, basically asking how our services are run by dispatch.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, they collate that information, and then they being the Boston they, makes determinations as to what they may offer a community or a group of communities relative to 911. It doesn't, it's just a survey of what we're doing. It doesn't,
Okay.
we're not going to say, yay, this is good, or nay, this isn't.
Okay.
If you actually look, you have the questions right here in front of you. You know, what's your budget look like? What kind of incentive would you be looking at? That kind of stuff.
Okay. Great, thank you.
There's no,
commitment.
Not yes, we want to, or no, we don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Just that they've talked about it in the past.
Yes.
well, this will go on forever because the state's still pushing. It's very obvious that they're looking at regionalizing dispatches
There's a large number of them already
that have been.
have them, yeah.
Okay.
But if nothing else, we'll get answers and we can do what we want with it.
Yeah, we still do our budget. We still set up what we want to do. Election.
Thanks. I'm going to move down to, we don't have any appointments. Am I passing over the objectives and projects tonight? Can I pass over? Thanks. We're passing over D.
Oh,
We have no point, huh?
Could I touch base on the police chief's contract?
Where are we on that? Where?
It's not, it's in the objection.
So if I can just have 30 seconds, listen, then I promise you can pass over it.
Thanks.
So the priority piece, so what this was, I've had a few conversations with the consultants, and I know Charlie and I think even Liz and I had this conversation as well. And the idea is, we've never sat down, the board and myself, and actually came up with the objectives that the board wishes for me to accomplish. But I do notice that every meeting there always seems to be something else that's added onto the to-do list. And I think part of the concern is that the board doesn't have a full comprehensive list of everything that's going on, and that's on me. So in your packet, you actually have a list of major projects. You also have a list of daily to-do things. One thing I've suggested, and was suggested to me by others, and perhaps you can look at this for next time, is the prioritization factors. So essentially I was told, it makes sense to come up with a matrix, which is essentially any large project that's going to be ongoing for a period longer than a week or so should really be evaluated to see how top priority it is. So things that have legal ramifications, financial ramifications on the town, have due dates, other people are relying on and waiting for, et cetera, end up having a higher value and become higher up on the priority, like the budget or the annual town report, things like that, annual town meeting, et cetera. So what Charlie's going at is, there's a couple different lists there for folks to review for next time. I'm hoping by the next meeting we can all agree to how we're going to analyze a project and how we're going to look at projects when they come forward, so everyone understands where things fall on the priority list and everyone's in agreement with it. But the project Charlie's talking about, there's actually one on my list that's been there for a while. Charlie flags it because although it seems to be very important to the board, if you put it through this priority list and if everyone agrees to it, it actually comes out very much towards the bottom of the list. The reason being, there's so many high valued items that are up there, things that have legal ramifications, time frames, financial ramifications, that just bump it right off the face. So what Charlie's asking is, if on that one project, if he can take the lead on making the changes to it, modifications and draft, so that's one more thing off my plate, and then to bring it back to the board when he's ready, or he's ready with his draft, I review it another time, and we go from there. Does that sum it up? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was easy.
Okay.
So will the board authorize me to proceed with doing the draft of the police chief's contract? That way there, myself and the chief could go round and round, getting this thing to a point where we can present something to the board, and it takes it off Heather's plate for a while.
Yep. Okay.
My only concern is that, as you said, going round and round with the chief, we won't know, we're not part of the decision, and you've already communicated things with the chief that we may or may not agree with. So a draft is different than
Going round and round.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a draft, basically outlining where we agree on certain things that seem to make sense to go to the board. But it's not a committal to anything.
Well, the problem is, once you open up the avenue saying, would you agree to this? If I can get the board to agree, then you come back and say the board doesn't agree, you've opened up that avenue. So I guess I'd like to see a draft of what you want to discuss with the chief.
Before you discuss it with the chief.
Before you discuss it, if that makes sense.
That's fine, because that's Heather's draft.
Yeah. And we started looking at that, and we had some comments. We just haven't met again. So I think, we talked about before, we need that meeting to go forward. Even if we have to schedule a separate meeting on an off night, I think I brought this up before, I think we should do it and get it done with. We got budget coming up. We need to know what to put in the budget for next year for the police department. So I'm in favor of doing it at an off time, spending 2 hours or whatever to do.
So you want to call a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to do this discussion?
I'm fine with that, and not necessarily, I don't want to put any more burden on Heather, but I don't know that she needs to be there for this. I mean, more than welcome, but I know we're putting a burden on you, but I'll be happy to do it over supper somewhere sometimes,
So are you making a motion, or are we accepting Charlie's question?
I'll make a motion that we put a special meeting together to discuss details that we can then allow Charlie to discuss with the chief, and then come back to the board.
Is there a second? I'll second for discussion. Did you have a day in mind? Or
Nope.
the conversation that has already happened before special town meeting? We haven't discussed any of that with the chief.
Right, and that's
So
why I'm concerned
rather than
with.
having a special meeting, shouldn't we have that conversation with him?
Well, I think there was, it was in executive session, there's some details we need to agree upon amongst us before we can have any discussion with the chief. And that's what I think this meeting will do.
So can we don't have a meeting next Tuesday, right, Heather?
We do not, but here's where the problem starts to lie on this whole thing. So we are in the midst of budget season. The finance committee and the finance team are meeting this Thursday night at 6 o'clock, and we're going over the budget. At that point, we may or may not need additional meetings, but I'm going to say that we're going to need a special Board of Selectmen meeting outside of the next Board of Selectmen meeting to go over the budget. If you remember last year, it was almost a 3-hour affair.
So can't we do that on Tuesday with this? Can't we just be proactive and schedule it? If you're going to meet on Thursday with the Finance Committee, you're going to want to go over the results of that with the Board of Selectmen.
Well, we're going to want to go over the results. The question is, are we going to be at that spot come Tuesday? Here's where my concern is with just the timing of the whole thing. So if we're moving the fire department budget and we're going to say it's only going to be 30 minutes, we know that that's very unlikely because we've done this in the past. And it's likelier to be an hour or 2 hours, which means that Thursday night's meeting that's supposed to be able to go over the whole town budget's not going to get there, which means chances are we're probably not going to be ready to do this next Tuesday night with the Board of Selectmen to go over the budget. However, that doesn't mean we don't have other meetings that we need to do, which include, not to be limited, to the meeting we need to have jointly with the planning board that needs to be set up at some point, and any other meetings that come along the way.
Well, I'm fine with doing one next Tuesday for a couple hours, getting this job done. If you need us to extend that Tuesday or come another day next week, then we'll do it. I mean, it's right in the end of budget season. We got to do what we got to do. But let's hit the task, I think, and get them done
It's
with.
gonna, to John's point, it's going to be hard to work on the budget for next year if you don't know what's happening with the police chief contract.
I guess I'm just confused because I thought we already clarified this in our prior executive session on this piece that was already helpful on the piece. Or alternatively, what you do is you come up with a range of where you think you're going to go and we plug it into the budget and you continue negotiations. It's totally up to the board, but please also do note that the board is still in the midst of negotiations with the fire chief for his contract. So if you're going to have a meeting with the police chief for his contract that doesn't currently exist, you'd probably want to also schedule a meeting for the fire chief's contract because
I'd focus on the police chief
salary,
contract.
you're going to have the same question.
I want to focus on the police chief contract.
So is everybody free next Tuesday?
I don't have my calendar with me, so.
Me either, but.
Well, here's the laugh.
But if you met at
Look what I
6:30,
scheduled for next Tuesday.
probably could.
6 p.m. Southampton budget.
I had a meeting on my calendar for next Tuesday, too.
Yeah, Southampton budget.
Yeah, so can we meet at 6:30 instead of 6 to talk about the police chief's contract?
Sounds good to me.
6:30,
Public budget meeting, first floor meeting. Right?
right? Me too.
Yeah, we all have it.
This is 1 to 9 p.m. or 6 to 9 p.m.
I know.
Yeah.
We all have it.
But, so that's the one she's talking
No,
about.
she's saying we don't have one.
She's saying we don't have it, but she scheduled us to have it.
Yeah, I scheduled it 3 months ago. I was
Okay,
I was
so-
looking ahead.
Okay,
hopefully.
Why don't you do an agenda and put this on the agenda, executive session, and then we'll, if we need to meet with the finance committee,
Then we're open.
yeah, we're open. It's already
If
posted.
not, we just have this police chief contract.
Meetings there.
Are we good there?
Sure.
Okay. We have no appointments. We have no PCFs. We're passing over all of them because the past practice has been not to sign any PCFs that are not fully filled out by PQB and Finance. Finance didn't meet Monday. We have no licenses, contracts, or other documents. We do have other documents. We need to sign the annual town election warrant. The annual town election is on May 2nd. I am now going to read, hold on, the warrant for the annual town election. May 2nd, 2016, Town of Southampton, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to the Constable of the Town of Southampton in said county, in the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of the Town of Southampton qualified to vote in elections and town affairs to elect an AccuVote ballot on Monday, the 2nd day of May, 2016, at the Town Hall, 210 College Highway in said Southampton for the following town officers. Town moderator, 1 for 1 year. Selectman, 1 for 3 years. Almoner, 1 for 4 years. Board of Assessors, 1 for 3 years. Board of Health, 1 for 3 years. Cemetery Commissioner, 1 for 3 years. Constable, 1 for 2 years. City Councilor, 1 for 3 years. Finance Committee, 2 for 3 years. Finance Committee, 1 for 1 year. Library Trustees, 4 for 3 years. Park Commissioner, 1 for 5 years. Personnel Policy and Procedure Board, 1 for 3 years. Planning Board, 1 for 5 years. School Committee, Hampshire Regional High School, 1 for 3 years. School Committee Norris, 1 for 3 years. School Committee Norris, 1 for 1 year. Tree Warden, 1 for 1 year. Water Commissioner, 1 for 3 years. Also, question 1, shall the town of Southampton be allowed to assess an additional $135,000 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purposes of funding a second shift ambulance service coverage for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2016? Also, shall the town vote to have its elected treasurer-collector become an appointed treasurer-collector of the town? The polls will open at 12 o'clock noon and remain open until 8 o'clock p.m. You are hereby directed to serve this warrant by posting up attested copies thereof at the town hall in said Southampton, and notices of the same usual places in said town, 7 days at least before the time of holding said town election. Hereof fail not, and make due return of the warrant with your doings thereon to the town clerk at the same, to the town clerk at the time and place of elections aforesaid. Given under our hands this, can I fill this part in? This 5th day of April, 2016. Someone like to make a motion to accept all of that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody like to discuss that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Please only sign where it says your name. We have minutes to approve. Has everyone had a chance to look at those?
Do you want to take this?
All I got is a red
I have a
pen.
copy. Our next Board of Select meeting is next Tuesday, which is, I'm letting people look at them first. Well, they were under a pile. April 12th at 6:30, we have a joint, we need to decide on a joint planning board meeting.
She's got to sign here.
I would accept a motion to sign the minutes when everyone has had a chance to look at them.
I'm good. I'll make a motion.
Can you read the dates of the minutes?
Dates of the minutes.
Oh, March 22nd. That's it,
March 22nd.
right?
I've got February 18th right here, and I've got executive meetings on March 8th.
So I accept a motion to sign those minutes.
So moved.
Or do a motion for the March 22nd. February 18th are already approved, they just, no one signed them.
Just need to be signed.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the minutes for March 22nd?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a meeting on April, what did we say, 12th?
12th.
Yeah.
At 6:30. We need to plan a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and Planning Board.
So here's the dates optional for that one that haven't already passed. We have Wednesday, April 6th, which is too late. This Thursday we can't do. So I have April 13th, which is a Wednesday, or April 14th, which is a Thursday, from 6 to 7. I just need either Liz or Jackie, because John and Charlie are already committed to coming.
The only problem I have is soccer has started on Wednesday, on
So I need a
Thursdays.
third, so I have a quorum.
Is it the 14th?
So Jackie, is the Wednesday the 13th or April 14th, Thursday, the better day?
What time?
At 6 to 7 with the planning board.
The 14th.
The 14th?
Yeah, we just didn't write it in yet.
All right,
So there's
it's
a
gonna be on the
joint
14th.
meeting with the Board of Selectmen and Planning Board on Thursday, April 14th, from 6 to 7. The annual town election is on May 2nd. The annual town meeting is on May 17th. We're going to go into executive session. We will not be returning to open session under Mass General Law, Chapter, oh, we have to pay the.
Yeah, do the
Could someone read the warrants, please?
warrants.
Yes, warrant W16-40 for $236,734.89. Warrant PD 16-39A for $143,845.22. Warrant 16-41 for $241,072.63. And warrant PD 16-41 for $41,179.09. And that's the motion.
Is there a second?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We will now be entering executive session. We won't be returning to open session under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, to discuss, number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and under number 2, to conduct collective bargaining sessions with union personnel. By roll call vote, please.
Konecki, aye.
Martin, aye.
Moulton, aye.
Sears, aye.